We are live.
Awesome. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the next edition of the Zelda Speedruns and Twilight Princess Community any percent bracket race tournament ladder that we're doing. Today we got JDLM against Taka, and we're looking at two runners with fairly significant times in terms of their times on the leaderboard. JD with a sub 3, which is a pretty big accomplishment, and Taka not far behind. I think it was a 4:11, so should expect to see some pretty high caliber runs here. TP being a run that is pretty difficult to get into, I suppose, from a beginner standpoint. There's a lot of hard tricks throughout the course of the run. There's a lot of different routes that runners can choose to use, some of them being more beginner friendly. I would assume that both of these runners are going to be using the fastest route. I don't know that for sure quite yet, but we'll find out soon enough here. JD I know for sure is. The run starts off pretty... There's some pretty significant sequence breaks that we're going to see starting off right away here. To skip the entire beginning portion of the game, running around collecting all the items like the fishing rod and getting introduced to the mechanics of the gameplay. Instead, we're just going to go and take this rock and clip through the gate right here. This allows us to set up for a trick that is known as back in time. This will allow us to take control of Link on the menu starting off in the game, and doing that allows us to do things like, for example, save whatever is in the inventory for the Link that's on the start screen. It's a pretty complex glitch overall, but as you'll see, the Link here has the tunic, the shield, and the sword already equipped. And because we're going to save over that file, we've now essentially skipped having to get those items as well. They're already, so to speak, in our inventory, even though we don't actually have them. That's going to be important coming up here because we're not actually able to collect these items, meaning that in a little bit here, we're going to have to see one of the more difficult tricks in the run to be able to get out of the beginning areas. For now, though, we're just going to see some pretty standard movement stuff, just progressing towards the next area.
Just a quick heads up, we might lose both audio and video for a moment, but we'll be back as soon as possible if we do.
Might seem on the surface. Optimal tech smashing, having a certain rhythm to it, using both B and A, and optimal rolling being much more frustrating than it should be starting off playing the game, learning how to speedrun it. So, yeah, little things to look out for. The run's filled with that kind of stuff. Frame perfect inputs if you can, get midna dashes after digging through holes, that kind of stuff. On top of the overall just very visible and obvious tricks that you're going to see throughout the course of the run as well.
Absolutely. Run's absolutely chock full of visible tricks, especially instances of those frame perfect dashes like we were talking about. One of the cool things I find is as we're going up to saving talent here is the differences between any percent and no saving quit at this point. Given that you have to defeat the goblins with essentially pushing them into um, another character's
From what
range.
I hear, that's actually one of the more frustrating parts of the entire run, and it comes right here in the beginning. If we think we have a bad time pushing Hugo around to do sword and shield skip, which is something up here shortly, the Macablins required for the no saving quit, which Mark was indicating, are apparently much worse. I personally haven't tried yet, so I don't know personally, but I've seen people struggle with it.
Oh, it's absolutely absurd. So many runs lost in the first 5 minutes to it.
So we are now seeing JD and Taka right on the heels here, entering the first portion of what we love about the beginning of TP speedrunning. RNG on top of RNG. So the goats here, optimally you're looking for a time that's going to be somewhere in like the very high teens to mid 20s range. It's not uncommon for people to get more than that in your 30s or 40s or, over a minute like I like to do sometimes. Good way to start off a speedrun there. Thing is, you can't get too bent out of shape about it because immediately following this, we get to go hang out with Bo, which is another portion of RNG right at the beginning of the run. So it can be frustrating to do at a top level. If you're requiring good times out of these splits, it means that you might have to spend multiple hours resetting over basically arbitrary RNG loss.
Absolutely, and like you said, it's absolutely arbitrary RNG. And Bo is no different. Bo is the first, I would say, 15 minutes of any percent is absolutely incredibly chock full of RNG and incredibly precise things. And
yeah, and then after that, it kind of just the RNG very gracefully kind of, I wouldn't say it becomes eliminated after that, but it does. In no way, shape, or form do you ever experience it on this level. I would say throughout the course of the run after this. After this, it just opens up to very difficult tricks, and in the second half of the run, it kind of turns more into a more movement-heavy based run, where just doing things properly without making mistakes is more important than getting a lot of the hard tricks.
And so here we're actually, our ability to talk to Bo here, or Bo, excuse me. Our ability to talk to Bo here is dependent on our having done the back in time trick, given that it sets Ordon to a state that's not otherwise seen in the beginning of the game. Bo's door is usually locked at this point, but instead is open, and we can actually get to this this fight by talking to him repeatedly. Each of the text boxes manifests separately, so you have to keep talking to him until he offers to teach you the trick to defeating Goron sumo wrestling.
Which apparently he keeps a very well kept secret from everybody for reasons unknown. As we can now, we are now watching JD experience the lovely side effects of RNG here. He's been kind of getting pushed around the arena for a minute here, which is unfortunate. Taka. Yep, Taka actually had a good bow. He was nice and compliant on that end, so we actually saw a reversal in lead change here. Again, from this point in the run, it's completely arbitrary, as was mentioned, and you're not really going to see an instance of execution being what's important, and I would say for about another like 3 to 4 minutes. After that, it'll be more dependent on each runner executing tricks consistently and not making mistakes, which will influence the lead change at moving forward here.
Absolutely. So just for casual reference, the most optimal possible bow is each phase can be done in a slap and a push. However, that requires incredibly fast mashing and bow to comply with that. So
Also, you need to
that's
change the direction on the control stick, which I didn't know until very recently. In order to get those to push off in one hit and in one cycle, you actually do need to, addition from on top of the mashing, you need to adjust the control stick angle slightly to push him towards the edge a little bit more optimally, which was something I was not aware of until I think like yesterday. So
for
little,
sure.
really tiny things can make a huge difference.
And that's not something that actually even most people realize casually, is you can adjust it so minutely in that instance. And in most cases it wouldn't be relevant to a casual run, but this is obviously much higher level than casual. So
So here we're going to see the first instance of being turned into Wolf Link. That's one of the staples that was that set Twilight Princess apart from prior titles to this. What actually I believe led to the game being like delayed, being released for quite a long time, trying to give us a more pleasurable experience, allowing us to control an entity other than Link, the Wolf Link. So throughout the course of casual gameplay, you get turned into Wolf Link and systematically go through these portions of the game where you need to clear Twilights by destroying the bugs that are causing that area of the region to be whatever infested by the Twilight. And we're essentially stuck doing the game in that order, except that the Master Sword can change that. We'll see something coming up here pretty shortly that makes I'd say the next 5-10 minutes of the run are the most significant noticeably from a casual perspective. Doing things over the next 5 minutes here is something that you don't think of doing as a casual player until you've been, you're quite deep into the game, so to speak. The most significant like breaks in that standard are coming up here very shortly, so right at the beginning of the run. Kind of
absolutely.
a unique take on that.
And I'm sure we can talk about it more when we get there. But actually, this is one of those instances right now, as we're currently watching this, where you can get first frame dashes, and you can see Taka actually did just get one of them. Usually Midna you'll have to wait for Midna to arrive at the destination before you can dash. But if you mash hard enough, or you know the timing of it, you can jump before Midna ever arrives, and that does save a few frames here and there, and that can be incredibly relevant over the course of a 3-hour run.
I've actually golded the split on 2 different occasions because of literally getting those frame mashes. So yeah, it can make a big difference. And here actually is another instance of it. Instead of Midna talking to you as you walk out of the tower, we saw JD get it, and Taka missed it actually. It's possible to skip that entire text sequence and jump off of the tower immediately. This is just totally neck and neck here. I mean, we're talking about a difference of less than 3 seconds, I believe, maybe 4.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, you're absolutely correct. Just looking at about 3.3 seconds right now difference, and it's actually catching up a little bit. JD is catching up, a little bit more optimal movement there.
A little bit more optimal movement, and the frame perfect text mash from the tower actually saves a lot more time than the standard Midna ones do. Just when you're setting up for Z dashes or L dashes with Midna, that one skips I think like 4 or 5 Midna text boxes, so it's actually kind of a significant one. A little bit more annoying because it requires a lot more buttons that you need to be mashing at once. But here we go. So this is the big trick here. Sword and shield skip. As I had mentioned earlier, we have the sword and the shield, but we don't actually have those items. We have like the image of those items, and the real ones are unobtainable. It was discovered, however, that we could manipulate our friend Hugo here in such a way to use one of the attacks. We use it throughout the course of the run using the boomerang a lot more often, but we can do something that we call LJs, or long jump attacks. And we're going to set Hugo up into a very precise spot on the wall, and we're going to attempt to long jump attack past the trigger that keeps us locked in this region until we have obtained the sword and the shield. And we're trying to hit the trigger that tells Midna, or that where Midna allows us, passage into the next area.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and a little bit of a mistake there by JD, pushing past Hugo. Now, this is incredibly precise. Pushing Hugo in an optimal way is incredibly difficult. This takes...
He got a little overzealous there. Kind of, I think he was going for a very optimal push to the line. If you push him all the way without stopping, he'll go to the line, and you can get a super fast skip, but it's pretty risky. And unfortunately, we saw Taka pull a very, very classic. I mean, it's totally something that most runners are very accustomed to seeing, which is the dreaded first attempts fail. Both runners, unfortunately, met that fate. This was about a minute. If you're done really optimally and you reset optimally here, I think it probably, like, the most minimal time loss you can get from this is probably about a minute. Depending on how Hugo behaves, because this is one more instance of RNG here, unfortunately. It's not major and doesn't affect the run a lot, but Hugo attacking you is random, and you can't push Hugo while he's attacking you, so you need to hope that he kind of just chills out and lets you push him. And that, sometimes can go better or worse, so...
For sure. And as we just saw from JD there, unfortunately, sometimes, depending on where Hugo is when you reload the area from voiding out, he can actually be stuck inside the loading zone going into Ordon itself.
Oh, did JD get that? Did he got that one?
Absolutely,
oh, brutal.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the worst one. You have to run all the way back. And then not only that, but he doesn't see you right away either. He actually, like, notices you, but then, like, for some reason, he needs to, like, re-notice you. Thankfully, we just saw Taka get the trick there. So, with the optimal spot and the optimal inputs, you long jump attack over the trigger that stops you from proceeding and into the one that allows you to pass. Both runners thankfully got that second try. We're looking gravy here. On to the next. EMS is the next major thing that's going to happen here. Early Master Sword. So right after that, we get to do another very difficult sequence break. Pretty dumb to learn. But this is, in my opinion, I guess, the most significant from, like, a casual perspective. You don't usually get the Master Sword until you have completed a massive portion of the game. I'm talking, I think, the first 4 dungeons, possibly, and
I think it's just 3.
Every Twilight. And then you're able to go and get the Master Sword. Instead, we are going to get it right now. So, very, very significant difference.
Absolutely. I remember when I first came across Mofat's run in 2013 at SGDQ. This absolutely blew my mind. At that point, Mofat was doing no save and quit, so we didn't get to see the back in time trick showcased. But oh, that was 12. Well, there you go. Perfect. Thank you, Chesko. Yeah, and it absolutely blew my mind thinking about how much you were skipping by being able to do this incredibly precise long jump attack. And this is the second instance of it, where we get to see a long jump attack showcased.
Yes, indeed. And this one, kind of same with the first one we saw. It tiny amounts of RNG here. We're gonna manipulate a Shadow Beast coming up. Also, interesting thing to note. I'm seeing it right now. So Taka is apparently. I'm not 100% sure if this means that the runner's opting to do a different bite than Forest Bite, or if this is collecting the bugs is due to a different route.
Yeah, this is actually quite interesting.
So we see one of the runners opting to do what is the current kind of standard right now, which is to just proceed without killing any of the bugs. And I'm assuming because we didn't see them do it back in time anywhere else, they're going to use the most recent find, which is the back in time at the beginning of the Forest Temple entrance here. Taka, however, is opting to kill the bugs, which I unfortunately am not 100% sure what that's indicative of.
I suspect this may be indicative of an inability to do forest escape. That is an incredibly precise trick as well.
Yes. That actually that's a good point. So it's possible that it's just a slight route variation here. It doesn't. We're not talking about a significant time loss from it, but we did just see JD both attempt and successfully do EMS there. He pushed the Shadow Beast up against the wall and used a midna dash to get up out of bounds and navigate to the portion of the game in which you can collect a Master Sword. So very precise trick, hard to learn, skips an incredible amount of the game and absolutely necessary 100% to learn if you're planning to run the game.
It really does, yeah. And one of the crazy things is what most people don't know is that when you're pushed up against a Shadow Beast, they actually have two different methods of swinging at you, and there's only one of them that will allow you to perform EMS correctly. Otherwise, you're just going to jump directly at them. Because what it does is it essentially targets their arm as they go back to a certain position. Now, Pisky, do you happen to know either of these runners' personal bests at this moment?
Yeah, so JD is just sub 3, so he's part of the sub 3 crew, and Taka wasn't far behind. I want to say it was like a 411 or something like that, or maybe even lower. Or 311, excuse me. So very, very close. It could have even been 307. I just looked before the run started, but not a significant difference in time. That being said, the sub 3 is definitely kind of the upper echelon of TP speedrunning, any percent. And Taka thankfully gets that on a second attempt there, pretty fast. It can be annoying if you just have to keep reloading the Shadow Beast. Now, something I did, unfortunately, too, you can mess up that trick after getting the jump attack out of bounds. It's really easy to void out as you're jumping down to that area down there. If you don't actually initiate jumping off of the edge or the cliff, having just dashed with Link, with Wolf Link, if you just do a soft jump basically without having dashed first, you're going to fall in void, which causes you to need to actually reload that entire room and try the trick all over again. So it actually, I've lost a lot of time recently in runs doing that before I ironed that little mistake out. This run is just so full of things that you can just lose absolute massive amounts of time doing just little stupid mistakes. One little error and you're looking at 3 minutes lost sometimes. So
now, casually, when you're doing the Sacred Grove, you're supposed to follow the sound of the Skull Kid's trumpet as well as a light that you see moving. Fortunately, both of these runners have the route memorized, so it's not like we're going to have to spend so much time following it. It's not RNG; it is a set path. So, and I think that's incredibly helpful as we're moving on to this next portion of the run here.
And this fight does have a bit of a, I guess you could say, technique or a sequence to it. We've just memorized how that fight works. Casually, I remember having some trouble with it, not understanding what would make the Skull Kid disappear off the rocks. We essentially need to just destroy one of the enemies, and a timer starts ticking down. How long he's going to stand there before he attempts to blow his whistle again, which is you're able to attack him as soon as he's blowing the whistle. So essentially, the runners are just attacking one of the beasts, waiting for enough time to elapse, and then approaching and initiating the damage at that point to finish off the fight as efficiently as possible. Which leads us to one of the most, in my opinion, fun puzzles that was in casual gameplay. This puzzle used to take me forever as a kid. Aimlessly jumping around, hoping I would get the statues to go to the right place. Took me. It didn't until I found out about the speedruns of this game. I wasn't even aware that there was set patterns that are set consistent ways of getting through this that we can memorize to do it first try. So
Also, one of the cool things here is, I think this is really cool, at least, is that the puzzle is actually shaped like Majora's Mask.
I never noticed that. That is really neat. It is.
And that it's theorized that could be a reference to this timeline being the hero of time going to Termina.
Absolutely.
Now,
and dealing with the Skull Kid as we just did too. So
absolutely. And I think this is this game is absolutely chock full of incredible Easter eggs and references to other games. A lot of the howls are from other games. Later in the run, we'll hear the Nocturne of Shadow, I believe it is.
The Requiem of Spirit.
Ah, there we go.
Wait. Oh, wait. Yes, I believe that's the Requiem of Spirit.
It's been so long since I played Ocarina of Time.
I should know this. I probably beaten Ocarina more than any other Zelda title, so. A little bit of a pull ahead here by JD, which honestly was probably just simply from opting to not collect, not kill the bugs. But as you see, the difference in routing there didn't play too much of a difference. So.
Absolutely, and this is the
Requiem, and Chad has confirmed it is the Requiem of Spirit.
Oh yes, fantastic! Thank you, Chad. I think one of the crazy things here is this is another one of those situations where optimal mashing of the text is going to significantly improve your time here. And Chad is exactly right. We're getting up to Gorge Void here fairly shortly, and I'm sure Chris would love to talk about that.
Gorge Void, the next big thing. So, yeah, Gorge Void is it's a frame perfect trick essentially. That if we get it, it saves. I think it's a minute in routing over not getting it. So, one of those things that players. You can mash for it and get it with some consistency. I have recently tried to learn the timing for it myself to single input like most of the top runners do. What I will say is learning that method isn't that bad, but I currently just do something in between. I kind of mash right around knowing where the frame is going to drop, and it improved consistency over just blind mashing, I'll say that.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of other routes that runners can use that actually don't lose a lot of time to this one. Picking up this game that don't do Gorge Void. Interestingly enough, it's more of just kind of a preference. This is currently considered to be the fastest possible route. We also skip getting Zora armor in this route. You can also opt to do it during any percent. So,
yeah, and the skipping Zora armor definitely increases the difficulty by a lot, and the time save.
Yes.
The time save is certainly there, and at top levels, it's definitely necessary when you're pushing for world records and especially sub 3.
Sub 3, yeah.
But yeah, it is an absolutely incredibly precise trick. That if you
multiple
if you don't
actually.
Get it, oh yeah, you're absolutely correct.
Not just Pillar Clip, but yeah, fighting Morpheal, and then actually subsequently later on fighting Zant as well. So.
Oh yeah, I hadn't even thought of that. It's been so long since
it actually crops up, on a number of occasions throughout the run. Skipping Zora armor, but.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I do agree with that too. Not much harder, definitely more consistent. And I mean, Pillar Clip and Morpheal are tricks that, with enough practice, become very, very, very consistent. I myself, even not being anywhere near the top level, don't really find that they trouble my run that much anymore. But it did require a lot of practice. Now we'll see here. Hopefully, JD can get the forced Temple Bite here. This was I want to say one of the newest finds to the game. This game hasn't seen a lot of significant finds over the last couple of years, but this one being one of them. We used to use a different back in time for this. JD did get it, so it's good to see. pretty consistent setup on that one. It takes a little bit of getting used to get down, but it wasn't too bad. You will see runners struggle with it from time to time, though. This one is what?
So go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to mention that. So this back in time is a little bit different than the one that we did at the beginning. This is called what we call back in time equipped. This one is allowing us to do some pretty crazy stuff inside of the game's memory, allowing us to skip most of this temple. This time we wanted to set boss flag values as high as possible, which the kind of long short of that is to determine how many monkeys you're supposed to have with you during the course of this temple. The programmers and developers decided to use boss flags as an easy way to indicate that within the game's files. Using this back in time equipped, we are able to void out during the the title screen that allows us to get back to during back in time, and then we actually saved at the beginning of the game in Ordon after leaving Bo's house, and this was a specific save that we load after we have voided out in the title screen. This allows us to skip the beginning of, I think it's King Bubbling 1 fight. And if we do this and soft reset the game, we essentially set the boss flag values to be as high as possible, which count down rapidly from the start of any boss cutscene. Those boss flag values being set that high means that as soon as we walk through this door, we're given the maximum amount of monkeys that it takes to cross that void without having to go around the temple and collect all the monkeys as you would normally do as a casual player. So kind of that was just a brief description of the trick. Honestly, it is a pretty complex series of sequence breaking that we're doing there, but kind of hard to explain as well. But that's essentially what's going on, and that's how we're able to skip that much of the temple.
Absolutely. And if anyone was paying fairly close attention to the cutscene there, you could see that at the beginning of the cutscene there was a bridge. And at the end of the cutscene, after it ended, suddenly monkeys. And that's kind of the running joke in a couple of chats, is that the trick is called suddenly monkeys. That being said, we are seeing JD get to the point here where we're going to get one of the most important items in the game, which is the key to so many different sequence breaks, the boomerang, the Gale boomerang itself. And that'll allow us to do.
I love the fact that this was one of the things that I think drew me to the speedrun to begin with. Kind of starting off, I had originally debated learning other titles like Majora's Mask, but when it came down to it, I personally found the sequence breaking that we're able to do with the Gale Boomerang to be some of the most intriguing and honestly like Zelda speedrunning in period. The long jump attacks are just really cool and unique. We can basically get to very unobtainable or sometimes very hard to get places, and we also use it to just save time in a lot of places too. Just simply optimizing movement, but also allowing for significant sequence breaks. The first of which coming up here very shortly. JD is gonna needs to leave Faron and Ordon now to go and experience the rest of the game. However, he hasn't cleared the Twilight and hasn't dealt with any of that, and so Midna will very obstinately try and prevent you from doing this. However, because we have the Gale Boomerang now, we're going to use the very first LJ that you learn and see in the run, and we're going to skip that and allow us to leave anyways.
You know, honestly, I think Midna's the real antagonist of the beginning of the game.
She really
stopping you
is.
from going everywhere.
Yeah. Without her, we wouldn't even need to do a sword and shield skip or anything. Yeah, that's very true. I don't know. Her and Bo have some dueling it out to do, I guess.
For sure.
In my opinion, Bo might be the ultimate. He's worse than Ganondorf, in my opinion. So
I'm definitely curious how many runs have been lost total to versus how many runs have been lost to Bo.
I've only been running the game for a few months now, and it's like over 100 for me. So if other runners rack up those kind of numbers, it's gotta be in the tens of thousands.
Absolutely.
uh,
If I remember correctly, MoFat has about 5,000 runs lost to Sword and
that
Shield
is
skip.
unbelievable. So here we saw Taka progress through that whole portion very cleanly as well. Now leaving and attempting to get the heck out of Dodge here. So JD is going to do another LJ right here. This one is not required to beat the game. However, we don't want to talk to the postman because he's slow, and all he's going to do is give us a letter telling us how slow we're being anyways. So screw that. We can LJ past his trigger box and not have to talk to him.
Absolutely. And the great game gave us, in the beginning, there was slow, and the great game gave us boomerang long jump attacks, and it was fast.
So here we go. This is now we'll see if our first runner gets Gorge Void here. Dun dun dun. Essentially, Gorge Void. He's going to beat the Shadow Beast down here, and there is a single frame in which after the fight ends and before Minna talks to you to try to tell you that you need to warp the bridge from like another location over here, there's a single frame in which you can input a jump attack into the void, which allows us to skip doing that. And we can continue on to Kakariko Village immediately from here, which just improves, like I said, routing by about a minute. And we got Gorge Void, so here we go. Let's go, JD.
Now we've got part 2 of the trick where we have to
Rupee
get Rupee Roll. Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, if you thought Gorge Void was over by getting the frame perfect input, you were wrong. So now we need to, I wouldn't say super difficult, more stressful to learn than anything. You just have very, very tight timing on this. You need to pick up that ruby before it disappears, that 10 drop right there, by doing a fairly precise series of inputs here. If you get on top of the fence here, you can do something that we call rupee rolling, which just allows us to get onto the other side of it here. Using some fairly careful and memorized movement here, we're gonna not fall into the void, jumping over here, and do a final LJ to skip the void, the gorge completely. Perfect. We're through.
Yeah, that actually went quite well. If you actually miss the rupee roll itself, the backup strat looks quite silly, but it works. You can repeatedly attack the fence after you long jump attack onto it in order to get over top.
I personally opt to save, to be honest with you. I save as soon as I get into the void, into the Twilight here, and if I mess up the rupee roll at any point, I actually just reset that my save, and I'll try the rupee roll over again. I believe it probably takes as much time as doing that dumb hover. So
it's definitely good that in Twilight Princess you can actually use saves and death strats, whereas you're not going to be punished for lack of a single segment run here.
No, and so now we'll see if Taka can successfully skip the void here. Unfortunately, that is an example of what it looks like when that does not happen. So it's about a minute loss. It's just a slight variation in routing here. Instead of doing the rupee roll right now and going to Kakariko, as we saw JD do, we're going to head back to the forest escape trick again, and we're going to go straight to Lake Bed Temple and Pillar Clip, and opt to do this after we've gotten the hook shot, or claw shot, excuse me. Something to note here that's kind of significant. So the reason we're seeing JD go back to this area and activate this cutscene right now after doing this is because this cutscene allows us to do something called map warping instead of Minna. So you can warp to locations via 2 different methods in this game. Z, and then asking Minna to warp you somewhere will allow you to do that. But opening up your map with one of the D-pad directions and simply pressing Z while having that open allows you to do the same thing, but it's faster. that is not so that is not available to you to do until you have activated that cutscene that we just went back and triggered.
Mm-hmm.
So
And
it saves a lot of time after you've gotten it.
Mm-hmm. And as we can see, Taka just unfortunately failed Force Escape there. Like I said, it is an incredibly precise trick, as with most tricks in this game. I wouldn't say it's one of the more difficult tricks to learn, but I would say it's one of the more frustrating because it does have a setup that relies on visual cues.
Indeed. And it's, I mean, precise enough to the point where, you know, even like, I rarely find myself having trouble with it, but then those random runs will come up where, for the life of me, I, you know, fail it like 3 times in a row or something and end up losing like the dumbest 35, 40 seconds that you can possibly lose in the course of the run. So
absolutely,
it can be, it's very, I guess the lesson to be learned here is that, you know, to get a good time in this game, it is extremely demanding. You see these times near the 3-hour mark and below happening, basically just 3 hours of essentially flawless execution, very, very minimal mistakes, not failing any big tricks kind of thing. And to do that over the course of a 3-hour run is definitely pretty grueling.
Absolutely. And as we can actually see here, both players got gate clip incredibly quickly. JD on the 3rd try, Taka on the 1st, and is it pixel perfect, Pisky?
So it, you know, I guess I wouldn't be the right person to ask. I actually predate, or I should say, I don't predate. Thankfully, wolf skip was something that was just a thing when I started running the game. They used to use Epona, which just looks brutal. I don't know if it's pixel perfect, but it is. I don't believe it is, but it is. It's kind of tight, but it's, I would say, honestly, very, very easy once you've done it like 3 or 4 times.
Mm.
So here we go. We're going to see if our first runner gets pillar clip. This is a very, very, very difficult and precise trick to learn at first. We're good and through.
And there's the clip. Let's see if they make it to the loading zone here.
Which is actually the harder part of the trick, honestly. So you need to become very good at what we call tap swimming, which is equipping and unequipping the iron boots in a rapid motion like that to swim forwards. And the amount of air that we have, because we don't get Zora armor, pretty much pans out to be just enough to barely get to the loading zone after doing pillar clip optimally. If you don't tap swim properly to that point, you're almost guaranteed to drown and run out of air, causing you to need, at that point, you need to reload or basically re-go from the shoreline of above and completely try the trick all over again. So it can lose quite a lot of time to fail.
Absolutely. Fortunately, both players got pillar clip on their first try, as well as made it to the loading zone here, so that wasn't an issue for them. But again, those are very precise things to do, and like Pisky said, you can fail it to swimming just slightly suboptimally.
And thankfully, we are getting to a point in the run now where a lot of the very challenging and run-ending kind of tricks are, by no means are they coming to an end here, but both runners have successfully made it past kind of the really needy, very uber difficult precise tricks. Some more do remain, but they're not as nearly in high consistency as they were up to this point. Pillar clip is kind of the last of the very challenging tricks to learn, I'd say, at first. The LJ, that interestingly enough, that we're seeing JD and now Taka do right now, is a good example of one of the first, I'd say, very annoying LJs to learn. So there's different setups and visual areas that you can use for it, but bottom line is, this is one that will actually see a lot of runners trip up when they're learning this temple to do optimally. That one can be very precise. And it's just a skip, essentially, again, like half the temple, so it's kind of an important one to learn.
Absolutely, and one of those great artifacts of the little sequence break there is JD jumping off the top level there and doing a little bit of a swan dive. Absolutely.
A little bit of concrete to the face never hurt anybody. obviously, as Link shows here.
Absolutely. Link showing the absolute trooper that he is, being able to do that without, severe laceration.
Literal fearlessness. I
bones.
mean, honestly, that's some props. So
For
now
sure.
this is the second LJ, I guess, that kind of breaks up this temple into, what can be challenging about this portion. This trick is one of those dumb ones where if you see it in a speedrun as you just did now, unaware, you would have no idea that runners have lost literal minutes to that room.
Mhm.
It's one of those things where if you don't get that LJ correct, getting back to that point actually just takes a bunch of time. Falling in that room is really bad.
Absolutely. And as we can see here, JD is actually showing off one of the effects of the back in time equip trick, being able to go into the Deku Toad fight from the wrong end and just simply look up. The Deku Toad fight will trigger because of the boss flight.
Being set, yeah, still being set that high. Exactly. Yep. Essentially, it's like leftover boss flags that you didn't use up from all the monkeys. So we saw another kind of significant time save here. See if both runners get it. Yes, both runners did get it. Deku Toad can be killed in one cycle. This is a fairly precise series of damage done by the Master Sword. It requires 10 hits to be made on Deku Toad in a very precise timing window, I guess. If you do not input those 10 hits before I think your time is up, basically, you actually Deku Toad will rise to the ceiling again. You need to fight all the little bug things that come off his back. He'll jump up to the ceiling again and then fall for a second time. I think it saves like 30 seconds or something like that if you can do it in one sequence as both runners did. Something I myself to this day absolutely cannot do to save my life. So props to the runners.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people just.
I personally literally just accept that 35 seconds of time loss as like something that's going to happen to me during the course of my run right now until I have a better time. I'm stuck on 9. I cannot get the 10th hit to save my life.
I've gotten it certainly a couple times, but it is actually quite precise, as with most things about this game. So
now we're going to see. This can be a little bit of a dangerous thing here. We're going to trick this Kagurok with a. I don't think it's a Shadow Beast. I can't remember what kind of enemy's riding him. Anyways, we're gonna trick them into following us into the water here. This can be kind of risky because. Actually, he's not going to do the really risky strat, which I actually do applaud during a race, during a tournament race. That makes total sense. If you fail that... Oh, wait. That's just a strat I've never seen before. Cool. Right on. I thought he was going to opt to fight the runner on the back. So essentially, if that is failed, your game hard crashes on you. Straight up lights out. And we are seeing Taka go with the tourney safe strat here of fighting the enemy on the back. Not a very significant time loss at all. And like I said, if you fail the first trick, doing it the way JD did it, your game just straight hard crashes on you if you can't reset it in time. So it is rather risky. Not super difficult, but why take the chance, I guess. Another one of the newest things that have been found over the course of TP's illustrious sequence breaking history here. Out of bounds through this area. Kind of precise, not super horrible, but it saves having to kind of navigate your way through the treacherous tunnel inbounds, being shot at by enemies and avoiding rocks falling and all that kind of stuff. Kind of neat to see too. It's I want to say one of the newer things found, so it's good to know that the game hasn't totally died and become devoid of new stuff for runners to learn and optimize.
And a good clip back in bounds there. That's actually very important as well.
Yes. Cool. We saw JD actually nail the second minute text skip there. Like at the beginning of the game at the tower while going to go see Zelda. The one that you can do there, that's another one of those frame perfect text skips. just little things to shave the seconds. You know, you don't get a sub 3 by not shaving all the seconds you can.
Absolutely, and you know, both players are absolutely killing it with their tricks here. The
Yeah.
backup strats are just absolutely nutty. How quickly they're setting it up, and you know,
And
most of them just getting the first
Taka
strats.
demonstrating very excellently here how even opting to do different strats or using some kind of backups can still put you within just shouting distance of JD. You know, they're in the same room essentially right now. Mind you, the routing will change slightly here at the top of this room based on the fact that Taka has not been to Kakariko and killed the Shadow Beast there yet. But that being said, the execution has been very clean by both parties thus far.
Absolutely. I'm very actually excited and curious to see what other route changes are going to happen later on. Not just due to, you know, missing Gordvoid, but also due to personal preference and or tricks known.
Indeed. Yeah. It's a run with a lot of I mean, it's crazy how many. I think there's like 4 or 5. Correct me if I'm wrong, somebody in chat or whatever, but like basically routes that are used right now. Going from like Gorge Void, Zora Armor, Gorge Void, no Zora Armor. There's the Bite route. I believe there's Bite with Zora and without Zora Armor. And then just minor variations within the run too that you might opt to do just through personal preference. So really diverse amount of ways to get through the game for sure. And surprisingly, the routes, while having some difference in timing between them, don't actually have a horribly significant time difference between them. So runners wanting to learn the little bit more beginner-friendly route, you know, don't have to worry about being like 45 minutes slower than the other routes. You know what I mean? They'll be able to make up that time simply just by getting better at the game.
For sure, all of the current routes are actually incredibly competitive if you know the route.
I believe. I mean, they're like within 5 minutes, aren't they? I want to say they're like within 5 minutes of each other. Maybe even less.
So that might be a question for Demon.
Yeah, possibly with the exception of getting Zora Armor. I think getting Zora Armor probably does add about 5 minutes to your route, but at least I would assume. Maybe I'm wrong, but
I'm not entirely sure. I know in No Save and Quit, it's actually not, you don't lose too much time because of how much more quickly you can do Morpheal and Zant as well as Pillar Clip. Pillar Clip is actually hilariously, I taught my little brother to do Pillar Clip with Zora Armor in about 5 minutes, and he's never played the game before. So that's how much more free that trick is with Zora Armor.
For sure. So interestingly, you brought it up earlier. Very minor route changing things and variations. So using the most current route, Gorge Void, no Zora Armor, doing it the way that JD has currently done, you don't get this ending blow, which is required to beat the game, until fairly later on, after you beat Morpheal, actually, and do Midna's Desperate Hour. However, just due to slight routing changes here, we saw Taka get that much sooner. Just slight variation in the way that they're progressing through the game here.
Yeah, one of the funny things, it's kind of sad for the runner when it happens, although we do get to roast them every now and then, is when you see a runner go on an incredibly good time and then realize that some of that time is because they didn't get ending blow and they can't actually finish off Ganon at the end.
Yes, so we can use ending blow to finish off Morpheal and the boss in, for example, City in the Sky and stuff. But when we get to Ganondorf, the game wants us to actually have ending blow. So of all of the hidden skills that you get throughout the course of the game, ending blow is the one that we are required to get. We will howl at another stone later, but we will cover why we're doing that when we get to it.
Mm-hmm. Interestingly, no matter which stone you howl at, the first one will always be ending blow. You do get them always in order of how you're supposed to get them. Technically, casually, you're supposed to get ending blow by howling in Farron.
Yes.
As we can see, JD and Taka not howling in Farron, and yet they're still going to get ending blow.
So, Taka having to fight KB1, which is one of the things that not opting to, I think killing the bugs, honestly, is what that boiled down to earlier. Beneficial for that reason. Kind of an annoying fight.
Oh boy, there's a strat.
Nice. So, kind of discuss what's going on here in JD. So this is the first period in time in which you are asked to clear Twilight, not casually, but for the speedrun anyways. So we do need to clear 2 of the Twilights to progress through this game. We're going to clear both Eldon and Lineru. This marks like a period of the game where the tricks kind of go away for a little bit, and the game becomes heavily movement based and optimized. So this is a very movement optimized portion of the game. Collecting the bugs can be really annoying if you don't learn the strats properly. So, kind of a neat shift from how the run starts and then how it progresses through to the later portion.
And actually, chat definitely corrected me there, and you are correct, chat, that you don't actually have to howl once you clear the Twilight. The hero's chain will just kind of appear for you. That is 100% correct. Thank you for the correction there. But yeah, as Pisky was saying, this is an incredibly movement heavy section of the game. As when you're trying to get from place to place, might be. We are seeing just minor differences in movement that's going to save JD a little bit more time here than Taka. Just from the perfect dashing, or not necessarily perfect dashing, but more optimal dashing on JD's end here. It just saves frames, but again, those add up so incredibly much over the course of a 3-hour run.
And there's a lot of little minor strats too that associated with these sections. This is the room that we're seeing Taka do right now, for example. This is kind of one where you'll see a lot of newer runners come into Discord and actually pose the question, what's the most optimal way to do basement bugs? Basement bugs is kind of this thing where, like, when you see a top runner do it, it's a room that is done in, just a couple of seconds. Whereas if you don't really know the strat for it or anything, you might actually spend like a solid 25 seconds in that room trying to kill those bugs. And if you can imagine every single bug that you're collecting having that kind of a variance in like time, or how well you can execute doing that, it does really add up. So it's almost like you're not sure if it's a blessing that the really, really challenging tricks kind of take a ceasefire here for a little bit, because it's traded off with really precise movement that you can just lose a ton of time to. So.
For sure, that just comes down to runner's preference. See, I personally prefer the challenging tricks. The movement came a little bit slower to me. My time's still not that great. It's not really a competitive time, but I've been watching for almost a decade, so.
And shout out to literally everybody that the whole Twilight Princess community, the viewers, everything. I mean, it's an absolutely incredible community to be a part of. So helpful to runners that are trying to start off, and so much help that can be found on the Discord, and support from all the different people. All the viewers that continue to watch, religiously over the years as the runs have progressed, that make this game continually entertaining. So shout outs to everyone for that, honestly. Shout outs to the crew deciding to put this tournament together to show, even though this is the one Zelda game that hasn't seen ridiculous breaks happen over this last year, with everything happening in Wind Waker and Ocarina and Majora's Mask. Why not show a little bit of love that Twilight Princess is still here kicking, as in my very biased opinion, the best Zelda speedrun.
a bunch of Twilight Princess runners say that it's the best speedrun. Who's surprised about that?
Yeah, very, very biased opinion there, but But it is true that there's absolutely no reason, just because this game hasn't seen the same kind of breaks that all the other ones have, not to keep going and keep trucking on it.
For sure. And the nice thing is that we're not in a situation yet.
I hard agree. There is that's exactly how I feel about it. I was trying to be politically correct.
Absolutely. I mean, that might not fly on a GDQ couch, but I think when we're watching a Twilight Princess tournament, it'll fly here.
Right. So we are now seeing JD get into the second portion. So this is the second Twilight, and actually, I guess that's really all I was mentioning about that anyway. But interestingly, I did see Taka just do a trick that slight optimize. So you'll see very, very top. I think like Adam and like maybe like the top 3 runners do it consistently. Maybe a couple others. You can actually turn in. You don't have to turn into human there and use the boomerang. There's like a really dumb strat you can use as Wolf Link to do Bomb House skip, which is what both runners did there. It skips having to actually walk into that building and activate the cutscene where it blows up and yada yada. It wastes a bunch of time. There's a setup you can use as Wolf Link. Very risky, pretty hard to do, and saves very minimal time. But obviously, if you're trying for one of the competitive world record times, it's something that you're probably doing. Thankfully, at my level, I don't have to worry about that one yet.
Clarification on pronunciation. Thank you, AX, for that. I've been wondering for about 5-7 years now, potentially, and I never found myself asking because I was just typing it out. But thank you for the clarification there.
Oh, good call. I see that scrolling up in chat. I literally, like you said, I've literally always just typed it out too.
Yeah, I mean, back in the days when I was Disney MTG, hanging out in, MoFat stream almost exclusively, I've heard MoFat call you a number of different things, so I wasn't really sure.
So both runners cleaning up the first Twilight there, and we saw JD do a couple of small time saves here. As a casual player, you might be familiar with being kind of waylaid by the Zora Queen as you're trying to leave there, and she informs you that her son has been kidnapped and is sick or something like that, and she wants you to save him, blah, blah, blah. We turned into a human here during this rock sequence where you at the end of the Twilight, where you warp the boulder that falls during the volcano eruption or whatever. We turn into a human in order to do a small time save here, where we just can skip talking to her altogether. So we don't have to deal with that. And then going down the waterfall there's a very precise small frame window to do a side hop versus some slower strats. So I'd say those are kind of the major time saves in this particular split. Apart from that, there isn't a whole lot to note in this one except for just pure movement optimization.
Mm-hmm. One of the funny things, and I hate to always liken Twilight Princess to Metroid Prime, but those are the two games I run. I guess Super Metroid is the one I'm referencing here, but we don't actually get into the business of saving her son, because why do that when we could save frames?
Yeah, I totally agree. And you do mention, I mean, it's funny because I run that as well, but they are very similar in a lot of ways. The two speedruns are fairly akin to each other in ways that I think a lot of people wouldn't know or necessarily notice. So it is very fair to make references. Not everybody would understand them, obviously, but it's funny how if you are aware, if you know kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. I don't suspect that we have a chat filled with prime runners here, unfortunately, though.
Unfortunately not. Rip. Another great speedrun.
Jinkies.
All right. I don't believe either runner managed to get the super pog time save of skipping the midna text there. There's like a blind like frame window where you have 0 visual cues or audio cues to go by, but you can actually input a side hop before gaining control of Link, and it actually skips Midna talking to you when you try to leave Zora's Domain's upper region there.
Mm-hmm.
It's a super time save.
It's definitely difficult because it's based on like how fast your game loads, which is a variable. It's not always going to be the same.
Literally a frame perfect trick that has 0 input help or like 0 cues that you can go off of, and has a arbitrary time difference based on how fast your game is loading. I think that's like the essence of a truly pog trick right there. Honestly.
For sure. Depending on
thankfully, it only saves like I think literally 5 seconds or something like that, so it's really not a big deal. But it does feel really cool to get.
For sure, and depending on which runner you're watching, you can definitely hear some mashing occurring when that starts to happen.
Absolutely. Yeah, I go for a pretty hard mash during that myself.
Mm-hmm. Biscuit, out of curiosity, what technique do you use to mash? Because I've heard a lot of people talk about using a spoon. I've never tried that myself.
I switch off personally, but for bow, I actually prefer going full claw grip, laying the controller on my lap, and using the tips of both of my pointer fingers on a repeated like alternating motion, actually, smacking it out. So it's kind of like it is a 2-finger method, but I use the tips of both my pointer fingers specifically for bow. For that particular mash, I usually just get by with a straight thumb mash, which is I can personally do fairly quickly. But I'm sure there's everybody's got kind of their own unique methods for mashing, and I think to varying degrees of results. So
AX with the old school Xbox 360 Call of Duty strats, just turn on your turbo.
I use the turbo button now. Or turbo thumbs, I guess. You could, be like one of those fabled task runners and be a robot and just, have like mechanical limbs.
The good old Demon, Justin DM, SVA, T3 strats.
Yeah, no kidding. Shoutouts to Demon, literally, and Ace, honestly, for being literally 2 of the top Twilight Princess runners, and rarely ever running Twilight Princess.
For sure. And
typically
cool
considered. I'm sorry.
Ace is just such a cool guy too. Just every time I've interacted with him,
right, absolutely.
Such an incredible
situation. Both of them pretty avid Wind Waker runners, currently, anyways. Right now, Demon holding the world record in any percent Twilight Princess. After, I can assure you, a very, 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 very grindy session of attempting to PB there toward the end. Literally every single day, sometimes 50 attempts in one day. So
absolutely,
shout outs to that grind right there. In case people are wondering exactly what it takes to go get the time that low.
Commitment, dedication, lots of practice, and a day off work.
Or have that be your work.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's the dream, right? Being able to make money off of something you love as much as, obviously, these 2 players love the game.
Right. Yeah, there's the Demon methodology of pure everyday grinding, and then there's the Adam or Geradim methodology of literally having just done it since the dawn of time. He started running in like 2012 or 2013 or something like that. So literal just tenureship, having played this game.
Yeah, and then of course there's the Pheno strat of getting the world record in Twilight Princess HD and then saying see you in a year.
So JD coming up to the end of actually both of them. Taka about midway through here. JD coming up to the end of the Lineru Twilight portion here, fighting the final boss, boss bug.
Total nightmare fuel too.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Fight has minor things that you can optimize throughout the course of it. There's quick hits that you can get on the beginning of the dash attacks towards you that save like the bug flying up into the air and doing it again. Things like that, things of that nature. Also, the quick kill on the legs there. Waiting to do the Midna attack until you've disappeared behind that last leg, the way you saw JD do, does it actually, I think, makes the kill like 4 seconds quicker or something like that. So
yeah, it's like 2.5 to 3.5, I think.
yeah, so I mean, some decent optimizations during the course of that fight right there. Now we're going to get back into a little bit more heavy sequence breaking here for a little bit. Right now our objective is to get bombs. Kind of a roundabout way of doing this. We're going to go, and the fastest way that we can do it from here is to go and basically trick Izza, who, bless her soul, is having a bad day, and we help her out. Kind of. Anyways, we help her out just enough for her to offer us a bomb bag, so then we can steal it. It's temporary, which we'll kind of get to in a minute here after when it becomes relevant. But
we're kind of like the bellhop that walks away with 2 bags. And we can see Taka here getting just to Castletown to get one of the bugs.
This is by far the most out of the way bug in this.
For sure.
That segment would literally be minutes faster if we didn't have to venture all the way to Castletown to get this dang bug. This solo bug that's hanging out in Castletown for no reason.
For sure. I got so lost thinking about where could this bug possibly be, and I pulled up the map, of course, and there it was sitting over Castletown. I'm like, I didn't even know you could get there when I was playing casually.
Mind you, there is, I guess, one other point in coming over here which becomes relevant later in the run, which is we do fight the Shadow Beasts that are opening up the portal that we use to warp to Castletown at the very end of the game after defeating Zant. So I suppose we get that out of the way too. But
that is quite nice, yes.
So here we are now seeing JD do the Howling Stone that we saw Taka do earlier. So like I said, this was a totally arbitrary choice in where they get it. The one that we saw JD use, I guess, would be kind of typically considered the most current like way, but that was the same Howling Stone. Notably, as Mark mentioned, they used different Howling Stones to do it, but it's going to accomplish the same result here. Getting that ending blow.
I do just want to enjoy for a quick second here JD's split there for a Midna's Desperate 6 minutes. It's supposed to be Midna's Desperate Hour, and it has some absolutely lovely music to it. But
she didn't need a Howling Stone. Okay.
Did Taka take the one in Farron then?
Well, it was pointed out in chat that Taka didn't need a Howling Stone. Which I guess without a little bit of clarification, I'm unsure of.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
They took the one at the entrance to Forest Temple.
Ah, yes, right. Yes, I
guess that would make sense. That would be another reason to clear the Twilight there if you really don't want to use Howling Stones.
Indeed. So we just stole Izza's bombs. She offers you a temporary bomb bag after helping her clear those Shadow Beasts right there. Problem is this bomb bag does not stay in our inventory. It is a temporary one, and I think like saving, quitting, dying, and like loading the start menu all caused this bomb bag to leave our inventory. There's maybe even other variables that cause that to happen as well, but those are the main ones. So now that we have it, we emptied out all the bombs out of it and went and picked up this chest, which filled it with water bombs. Because now that we have water bombs, the fastest way to get a legitimate bomb bag in our inventory is to get one from the Goron that hangs out at the bottom of the Zora's Domain pond or pool or whatever.
Yeah, he's actually stuck in the rock you dropped into Zora's Domain to melt it.
Sorry about that, bud. And then we blow it up. At least we do blow it up for him, I guess.
For sure.
You know, not
You
without,
gotta think, how long is he stuck down there, though?
right? Yeah, it's kind of just been laying on him there. Poor guy. So this is why we emptied out the bomb bag, because now that we have water bombs, and doing where we got them was just like the fastest location to get them from, essentially for our routing purposes.
And unfortunately,
one of my favorite tricks in the run coming up right here. Boom! That's called Rocket League. That
Rocket
is
League.
Sweet. Not very difficult at all. Something actually that, uniquely enough, you know, if you're not even trying to speedrun this game, but you just want to do a really cool trick, I would say that's a great place to start right there. That is a fairly simple trick to do, and it looks really cool.
For sure. Unfortunately, if you haven't emptied your bomb bag fully before you attempt to get water bombs, you actually just get a bundle of regular bombs, which unfortunately makes it so you can't really as easily go get the real bomb bag. Now, I believe, as Pisky was mentioning, it is specifically a game over screen or going and loading the start menu that removes the bag from your inventory. So, voiding out, fortunately, I don't believe does. But we are going to see here the first implementation of map glitch by JD here. Biscuit, do you want to explain that one?
Well, you know, and we kind of missed it happening there, which is no big deal because in a couple minutes here, Taka will be doing the same thing. Yes, we are using a glitch here to skip getting the fish scent and all that kind of good stuff to get into Snow Peak early. You'll see it happen here once Taka arrives at that location, at that point in the game here. Basically, we are cutting out the need to load the area properly, I suppose. We wouldn't be able to continue through the blizzard if we didn't have like the fish scent, the reek fish scent. Using map glitch, we can just bypass that. Unfortunately, we can't leave though. We can't enter into another loading zone per se without crashing the game here. So this is going to be why you see a second instance of howling at a stone here. So this is not in order to collect any hidden item or anything like that. This is simply to deactivate map glitch, essentially. With map glitch active, if we tried to get into the next... oh, it's not a crash, just a soft lock. Okay, cool. I was unaware of that. Either way, not a good thing to happen, so thank you for the correction yet again. You're a lifesaver there. But yeah, in order to progress in a timely fashion, we do howl at the stone there.
I'm very interested. If anyone has a Taka Split, I'm very curious to see the route that they're using here. I don't think I've ever seen this specific route.
So I'm trying to. Okay, so so what Taka did right there, that opponent clip, I think. What? Yeah. Okay, I'm trying to remember what this is relevant from. My apologies in not necessarily knowing this off the top of my head. This was done, I think, to.
It was King Bubbleton 2.
Yeah. No, it's not annoying at all, honestly. It's very helpful. Good to get the most accurate information out there as possible. Yeah, I'm actually having trouble remembering what exactly it is. So I guess, again, if chat could help us on this one. I can't remember what it is that you're changing about your routing to fight. Or do this escape sequence here.
Mm-hmm.
While we're waiting on an answer from that, I will say we're seeing JD do one of the most annoying things that I personally like. You didn't even ever know this was a thing until you start speedrunning this game, but blind snowboarding is definitely a thing. Remember,
silly.
kids, practice blind snowboarding. Don't just assume you're going to do it correctly and never practice it, because you will lose run after you will lose so much time to this really stupidly difficult crap. You can progress down the mountain here without, I guess, having good visibility by opting to not kill the shadow beast there, using an LJ to go out of bounds. And
really important that they get the rupee there, which unfortunately.
absolutely.
Yeah, there's a purple rupee there that it loses a bunch of time if you don't get, unfortunately. Oh, that's
no, that the risky the ever risky attempt at doing the fastest route there does cause you to reset from the top, unfortunately.
Thank you, AX, for that. Do you happen to know JD's pronouns? We really need if we had, like, in our view. Oh, perfect. Thank you. It'd be nice if we had on our view list of pronouns as well, but I'm sure we can just confirm for future.
Absolutely. And again, still not 100% sure what the difference is in the routing here.
Yeah, it's very interesting to watch. I'm just not sure what's going on.
So I do know that. I know that the pony clip itself is actually really precise. I've seen people struggle with that before. I've never been 100% sure what it's skipping, though.
That helps you skip King Bublin too.
Right, but I'm not sure why why that would be relevant to skip, I guess.
Does Taka have bombs yet? Because if he doesn't, then that might be it. Since I believe the accepted strat is still to use bombs very precisely. Is that even a word? In a very precise manner to defeat King Bublin too, because he does have the 2 shields. Okay, so yeah, that would probably be it then. Without bombs, or you're supposed to use a bow and arrow, but because the game allows bomb arrows, you are able to use bombs in a very precise manner to defeat King Bublin 2. And without bombs and without a bow and arrow, which unfortunately won't be retrieved on this run as we don't go to Goron Mines. It would be impossible to defeat King Bublin 2.
Also, I guess getting the Zora armor here does eliminate what is, I would say, honestly, the mid-run crisis is what I call it, in terms of speedrunning Twilight Princess. Right smack dab in the center of the run, after having played for over an hour at this point, Morpheal is something that you need to practice a lot if you don't want to lose runs to it, unfortunately. Defeating Morpheal without Zora armor is both very rewarding and fun to learn, but also extremely stressful. To this day, my heart's pounding 100 miles a minute at the end of that fight, regardless of whether or not it went well or not. So that is definitely something I guess a nice thing to have at that point, to eliminate any risk midway through the run. So,
when I run Twilight Princess for friends, I usually don't even do it.
So here we are seeing Taka is about to do the map glitch. So this is what essentially we're just tricking the game into allowing us to choose a location to warp to, but then not being able to not warp to it. You're trying to transform, I think, and warp at the same time, and that's essentially what happens. And thankfully enough, there's a very free way of doing it. Just unplugging your controller. Otherwise, it would be like a frame perfect trick, and it would be kind of annoying to get. We can just unplug your controller and do it that way, thankfully. So
I've never actually tried that method. You'd have to explain that to me sometime.
Oh yeah, it's super free. So JD did some cool stuff here. He skipped Freezer using a fairly precise little clip, using invincibility frames essentially. He was able to skip having to do that room the proper way, and also you saw him draining bombs over the course of the temple there. Again, we are trying to empty this bomb bag, because now that we have a bomb bag, again, it doesn't have water bombs in it, but really we only care about water bombs during this run. That's it. We don't care. We don't give a flying care in the world about having any other kind of bomb. So the best way to get water bombs at this point is to get the chest in Lakebed, which is conveniently enough right on our way to Moorfield here. Meaning that during this portion of the run going through Snow Peak Ruins there is most optimal to burn your bombs. So if you were wondering why he was just tossing bombs all over the place while he was walking through the temple, that's the reason.
Thank you, Pisky, for that. I'm definitely using flying care in the world in the future.
A flying care in the world. So the rupee routing kind of just became complete here with collecting those 200 rupees at the end of Snow Peak here. That eliminates a lot of stress for later on when we need precisely 300 to get that weird dude to fix the cannon machine for us to get to City in the Sky. That's 200 of the 300 required right there in one swift movement. So that's very nice for the rupee routing. The rest of them we can conveniently enough basically collect in Arbiter Grounds coming up here. So.
Unfortunately, we're going to see JD's going to have to go a little bit out of the way because he didn't collect enough rupees when he was doing snowboarding there. That is one of the downfalls to blind snowboarding, is it's much more difficult to collect the rupees.
Thankfully, there is the... Yeah, I think he's essentially just going to need to collect one extra red from the undead dudes in Arbiter Grounds, essentially.
AX or Trez, if you're in the chat, could you confirm that? I believe they're re-dead, are they?
I want to say they are the re-dead. Did he just OB that bombs? No, not necessarily. So he just burned the bomb bag, and then he officially filled his real, honest-to-goodness bomb bag with water bombs. Yeah, he was just placing them in the waterfall to
For
burn.
sure. And that does happen to be slightly faster than dumping them into the...
Super cool. One of my favorite little, like, tricks in the run, actually. Bridge clip there to skip getting the boss key in Lakebed Temple here. There's been multiple different methods used throughout the course of speedrunning this game. That one looks, I don't know, I've always thought it was like really Majora's Mask-esque almost. Kind of like one of the few instances of time where you get to see kind of like a Majora's Mask almost type sequence break. Kind of doing a long jump attack into the, over to the bridge, and then doing kind of a precise series of like sword and jumps to clip down through the bridge, skipping, getting the boss key for the temple. Now we are fighting Moorfield here, while Taka thankfully does not have to do the snowboarding blind, which killing the Shadow Beast is almost worth it, simply just not to have to do blind snowboarding, in my opinion.
For sure.
Oh man, that is just a pain to learn. Especially if you're going to do the shortcut here too, that Taka's doing free of charge, with the whatever, the snow cover. It's very difficult. So anyway, more still here. Kind of got distracted because there's a lot going on. So we're using a trick called air refill with the bombs. This is why we want water bombs in this run. Basically, there's a mechanic that allows us to refill our air meter. Please get it. Please get it. No. Oh my gosh. Oh, it's just barely too slow there. That's very unfortunate.
That's very unfortunate.
Really unfortunate. So, essentially, the way that works, we're able to have use water bombs underwater, right? So if you have like your iron boots on, for example, you want to pull these out, and then if you're able to drop a water bomb while swimming, this is important, and I mean drop it with like not just having the bomb fall out of your hands. if you're able to drop the bomb, it refills your air meter, which is what we need to do in order to kill Morpheal. Like optimally, it is possible to do once. There is such a thing as one bomb Morpheals. Fairly difficult to do and actually RNG based as well. So it is rather you don't see it gone for in runs very often. The 2 bomb is kind of what most runners set the standard for. You know, if you can just use 2 bombs in that sequence, it saves time later because we're able to use bombs throughout the course of the run to save time in later areas. And also it's required for beating Phantom Zant, or not Phantom Zant, excuse me, the underwater phase of Zant. So using as few bombs during Morpheal, obviously in terms of also being fast, is also important in terms of just setting yourself up for success later on. Unfortunately, we were a little slow on getting the second water bomb, which would be the final one, laid, which is just due to the fact, you know, if you get a bad... This is one of the other portions of the run where RNG does play some part, some part in it. Essentially, there's a lot of different like pathings that Morpheal can take, and some are much easier to deal with than others. The freest ones honestly make the fight not seem all that difficult, whereas some of the worst ones that we can deal with sometimes feel as if there's nothing you can do about it, basically. So, you know, the more you've done this fight, the less excuse you have for failing it, but there's always the risk of it happening. I mean, like I said, my heart will pound to the end of, you know, time until this fight is done, essentially. Because it is risky and it is rather time consuming to fail. As you see, we are now just getting back to not even quite where we were before the death there. So pretty significant time loss. However, in a race setting like this, it doesn't, you know, it's not as detrimental, seeing as the point of this isn't to PB on either case. While being nice, it isn't, you know, run ending, so to speak, which is actually really nice.
And we are seeing JD enjoying the benefits of using some of the more difficult strats here, as Taka is not quite to Morpheal yet, and if JD is able to defeat Morpheal on this time, they'll secure a fairly solid lead here.
All right, so this is, yeah, so that just went better. He was able to get that second bomb, no problem. He got a pretty... If he mashes hard enough here, he won't get sucked in. Ugh. Morpheal's just being dumb.
Morpheal be like that sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. I would agree. Never go for one bomb in a race. Oh, is that... Okay, so that... I guess I wasn't... I maybe missed that. I guess that was why he drowned the first time. He went for the one bomb, apparently. Yeah. Okay.
Oh.
That was clutch. He got it right at the nick of time there.
A little bit clutchy,
so
I'm not
right
gonna
at
lie.
the end, the way we're able to do a 2-bomb sequence, which is, like I said, kind of what is typically what most runners go for. You're required to hit Morpheal 3 different times, but we can chain the last 2 together by a very tight timing, getting a regrab. Basically, as soon as we gain control of Link again after damaging the eye for the second time, there's a very tight window in which we are able to use the claw shot to re-grab the eye, and we have just enough air in our air meter to actually perform the ending blow and finish off Morpheal, eliminating the need to actually sink down to the bottom and use a third bomb. Absolutely.
Twilight Princess, of course, demonstrating liberal use of video game cliche number 8, destroy 3 of anything to move on.
Literally over and over again throughout the course of this run.
That's kind of a Legend of Zelda staple at this point, though.
Absolutely. So we are now done with Morpheal. At this point in the run, I would say my blood pressure drops significantly. I
For sure.
breathe easy again after Morpheal has been killed. So not to say that the rest of the run is easy. In fact, this is where the run takes a drastic change in kind of composition. We are now going to enter into the... You have to do basically the full temple and the movement and, I don't know, optimization of these dramatically picks up from what it was before. Taka currently blissfully enjoying not having to run out of air while killing Morpheal here. While delivering the final blow to Morpheal.
Hold on, can someone confirm whether Taka just got a 1 bomb?
There's no need for a bomb in Taka's case.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
no,
what I was saying.
sense.
Blissfully enjoying not needing to run out of air.
Yes.
Using Zora armor. So yeah, and I do agree. The first part of the run does require a lot more practice because of all the really hard tricks. But the second part of the run is where the hard tricks still, I don't know, they're very, very spaced out. There's little ones that you can use to save time, I guess, over other people, but they're not required to pass, like, to progress through the game anymore. The harder tricks you use, the more time you can save, essentially, versus just simply not being able to proceed without knowing how to do the trick. And at this point in the run, we now have to enter Arbiter's Grounds, City in the Sky, Palace of Twilight, and Hyrule Castle. And we essentially, yes, we have optimized the way that we go through them and, you know, skip things here and there, but essentially in stark contrast to the first temples that we went to, which were forests, where we skipped getting all the monkeys. Lakebed, where we just completely skip basically the entirety of the temple. Goron Mines, which we never even entered. We're now kind of forced to do most of the temple. And these take up much more time than the prior entrances into the game's temples required. So, kind of a cool... I've always found that really, really neat, the way that the run is split up like that. And Morpheal is kind of that point. Once you've killed Morpheal, now it's time to beat some temples and go and fight Ganondorf.
For sure. I do actually wonder, now it's definitely up to the runners, of course, because it does, lose a small amount of time, but I'm very curious whether we're going to get to see the glitchy cutscene if you unmorph before, transform back to human before talking to Zelda here.
Ah, yes. Maybe one of them will show it off for the memes. You never know. It's unlikely, seeing as when you walk through that door, we usually skip that cutscene immediately, just as a time save. But you never know. I know it was showed off in a GDQ at one point.
Oh yes, so, I believe it might have been Mofat that showed it off.
I think you might be right. Yeah.
Yeah. And it is absolutely silly.
It is rather ridiculous. Yes. Almost as good as the glitch horse cutscene too that you can get in Kakariko.
So good.
Yeah. So if for you guys, for those of you watching that haven't totally immersed yourself in Twilight Princess speedrunning glory yet in tricks and stuff and glitches, a lot of non-run related stuff that you can always look up, such as those the glitches we're referring to, stuff that quite frankly just puts a smile on your face.
For sure. Let's just say
really ludicrous stuff. Basically,
if you ever go through a cutscene in the wrong form, the game gets really upset at you and starts, to do silly things.
There's really no way to describe what it is that happens. It's kind of one of those things you just need to see.
You can always use the age-old adage of the game gets confused.
Yes, that's the simple answer to that there. So Midna's Desperate Hour, another one of those, you'd say almost like Elden Twilight-esque segments or splits during the run. Not a lot of it's pure optimization here, movement optimization, and just doing it as efficiently as possible is where you're going to see runners save time over one another here. It's a very relatively short segment with some decently hard movement here and there. The room that JD is currently in, you can see runners lose a lot of dumb time if you haven't practiced this room and or gone through it very many times. There's a lot of dumb ways to just lose. Particularly ropes in this game have some of the absolute worst coding in video game history. I don't know if they were purposely attempting to code these ropes to make them as difficult as absolutely possible to get on with Link, but they succeeded in doing that. And it is unreal how difficult and stupid it can be to actually get on those ropes for a try. That is something that you just don't even know. You would never know just seeing runners, go about doing it once in a while.
I failed 4 times.
I'm gonna chalk that one up to just a fail on the game developers portion. So
I mean, it's such an excellent game. Something had to go wrong.
So we did get fast cycle there, JD, utilizing pretty much perfect movement through that castle rooftops portion. Beating the early wind cycle and being able to jump to that flapping bridge in the wind before needing to wait for the wind cycle to reset. Kind of a staple of good movement in that section is being able to get that. So,
not uncommon to see.
Taka literally right on the heels here. Not dying to Morpheal was honestly a major contributing factor there in evening these time differences out.
Absolutely.
At this point, it's literally anybody's ball game with how diverse the end of the run can be in terms of movement and stuff. So here we go. Yeah, Taka perfectly demonstrating both Link's amazing acrobatic skills and how absolutely stupid those ropes are.
We are going to see Taka catch up a little bit here as JD does have to get ending blow, which Taka already has.
Another prime example of routing choices. Yes, exactly.
Oh boy, watching these runners definitely brings back memories of my first time playing this game. Just absolutely freaking out when I realized the lore behind the hero shade.
Also, shout-outs to not taking 70 hours to beat the game. I believe that's what my first completion of this game was. 70 hours was when both runners getting their early wind cycle. Good to see. That requires pretty tight movements. So, it's a staple of knowing that you did that section well, essentially, is being able to get that. So.
Oh man, rated 13. Let's get some hype in the chat as Zelda Speedruns 3 rates us for 13 viewers there.
Whoop whoop.
Going into as we approach the second hour, we're definitely going to be coming to, like Pitsky said, the more skill-intensive aspect of the run. We are going to be having to complete whole dungeons for the most part, as opposed to going through just bits and pieces. The first example of that, JD is about to come up to here as we enter the desert, Arbiter's Grounds. Now, this is Arbiter's Grounds. Is personally the bane of my existence. There are some days I'll just get to Arbiter's Grounds and think to myself, nah, I don't really want to complete this run that badly. I'd rather just not do Arbiter's Grounds.
And I mean, shout-outs to, I believe it was Mr. Men, who graced us with, in this temple, you'll see coming up, there's one of the tricks, again, the tricks don't ever disappear necessarily, but like I said, you can use them to increase time saved throughout the course of the run. We are going to do something called post skip, which Mr. Men's find was something of like a, just if you know, you know. Old Twilight Princess runners hate it. Literally hate it. What we now do to, for post skip is just so much blissfully easier. Still not free by any means. Still something that you need to practice, but it is absolutely like RTA doable without being completely dumb now. So big shout outs to Mr. Men for contributing that to our library of techniques that we can do.
Twilight Princess runners hate this trick. Here are 7 reasons why.
Oh my gosh, that is, and that is awesome, actually. I actually, funnily enough, started learning that because I didn't know about the new post skip thing, weirdly enough. And then somebody was like, "Why are you doing that?" And I'm like, "Because." Like, no.
Yeah, to be perfectly honest, that post skip, the old one, is almost the entire reason why I hated doing Arbiter's Grounds.
That being said, the Arbiter's Grounds does have a lot of very, very nitpicky movement stuff where you can just lose time, particularly just the collection of the pose. There's a lot of dumb kind of trolly stuff that can happen to you. Look at this. We are like literally almost neck and neck here coming into Arbiter's Grounds. So hype for a basically neck and neck entrance into the second half of the speedrun here. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I'm very curious if there's anything that Taka's missed at this point, or if we are truly.
No. We are neck and neck. As far as I know, there's no routing differences that would seep into this portion of the run that that he has opted to go for, versus JD. At this point, just due to more feel and other events like that, we are now looking at a neck and neck race here. We're about to see the second and final instance of map glitch here used in this run. Walking into the next loading zone here, we're going to use map glitch one more time in order to skip a pretty significant portion of this whole entering Arbiter's Grounds. There's the whole encampment thing that you have to go through essentially. Using map glitch and some fancy movement here and an LJA to get out of bounds, we're going to skip most of the encampment.
All right, so this is a strat I haven't actually seen before from JD here.
Yeah, this is the most fun. And it's not bad. This is
that's really neat.
Ooh, nice. I've never seen that LJ before though. Usually I go for a slightly different and slower LJ spot.
Yeah,
so that's nice.
Do you go behind the loading zone? Because that's the one I do.
No, I do it exactly the same way. That you're seeing both the runners do it here.
Okay.
I use a slightly different. I use more of a visual cue for the LJ though that Taka used rather than JD, who just flung his boomerang at the cliffside, which looks pretty OG to me for sure.
And another example of precise attacking being very helpful here, getting that quick kill on the King Boblin.
Yeah, that is a very good example of another one of the very things that you don't notice, I guess, maybe necessarily just watching this run casually. Not only did he chain quick spins out of a jump attack there, but I believe it is also required that you change the directionality of which quick spin you're doing from a forward to a backward one in order to successfully chain those together to get the quick kill one cycle on that boss fight. So yeah, pretty precise, pretty hard to do just when you're starting off learning the game, and kind of neat that you actually need to, that there's a difference between, forward and backward quick spins actually influencing, attacks at this caliber of speedrunning. So
absolutely. And runners, once again, as you said here, absolutely neck and neck. JD just got into Arbiter's Grounds, and Taka's entering right behind him here.
And as I said, I'm still, obviously I'm about almost 9-10 months of taking this game seriously as a speedrunner. So, by no means do I know or even claim to know, all the intricacies and ins and outs of everything. But as far as I can tell, I don't think that there is any more routing differences or major things that they have opposing right now. They truly did just eat up their times through various ups and downs.
Taka, of course, playing very consistently, and unfortunately, JD losing that time to Moorfielder.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. Taka opting to do a little bit more safe strats, getting getting Zora armor and stuff. But that's the power of how essential it is at a top level to not make mistakes for fighting Moorfield, for example. As you saw there, it literally, probably eliminated whatever the possible like upwards of 2 or 3 minute, lead that JD had at that point. So
let's. I just want to take a second to point out how amazingly intricate this dungeon is. Casually speaking, this was personally my favorite dungeon. Just from from a like absolutely neat standpoint. It's so interesting how they worked a number of things together, and the fact that it does make a callback to the Ocarina of Time Forest Temple.
Absolutely. So we are about to witness the Mr. Men improved version of Poe 1 skip here. Doing this LJ towards this pillar in the ground. Oh no. Not a big deal there. Pretty quick recovery. That allows us to do this sequence, I guess, which is just skipping having to fight this or whatever, collect the Poe soul for the first Poe. And we'll see who gets it first here. All right, we got it. Yep, just barely beating Taka to the punch here. And as was mentioned, it's just significantly easier than the old method. So,
Taka choosing to pause buffer that's actually quite smart there, and of course getting the first try because of it.
Absolutely. I believe that's I believe that's the Dragonbane method. That's the first one I learned, anyways.
I suspect as much.
Yeah. Dragonbane with 100% consistent pause buffer methods for like every trick in the game, basically. Like pillar clip. If you're having trouble with pillar clip, just look up Dragonbane's pause buffer method, and it's basically guaranteed that you'll get it.
For sure. Dragonbane's been absolutely a massive resource and asset to the community.
Oh my goodness, absolutely. And I mentioned it earlier too. In general, there's just so much help that you can receive. Another big shout outs to like Skyron, for example, creating the any percent video tutorial that you can actually watch, which basically holds your hand and walks you through this entire run, step by step. And, big shout outs to somebody willing to take the time out of their day to make those resources available to people that want to learn the run. So
for sure. And just a quick thing to demonstrate how important Dragonbane is to the community. Even in the Metroid Prime community, his name is very well known. And when you go cross community like that, and everyone knows who you are, it's really indicative.
Wind Waker as well. Wind Waker.
Yeah, absolutely. You're correct.
So collecting, unfortunately, now that we can only skip the first Poe. We do have to, unfortunately, or fortunately, if you view things through my personal lens, which is I enjoy the fact that we sequence break, but I also enjoy the fact that we essentially need to do things that are required to get through the game. But we are collecting the rest of the Poes, which is kind of the essence of this. Arbiter's Grounds is broken up into essentially 2 portions. There's the Poe collection and getting the spinner. And once we get the spinner, there's kind of like a brief second portion of it, which gets us to the final boss. The first portion being, I would say, I guess, a bit more intensive in terms of movement optimization and things like that you can do. The second portion, though, having, I would say, more difficult rooms in general to just not fail. So, again,
absolutely, roller coaster section. The chat's going.
Absolutely, yeah. The roller coaster section. Oh my gosh, that's actually very accurate.
And I believe one of the members of chat here was pointed out that these guys are referred to as Re-Dead Knights, and
Re-Dead Knights. That's what they are. Okay. And thankfully they dropped 20. They gave us 20 spots, which is amazing.
traditionally, Reed Dead don't actually use weapons, so that should have been a bit of a tip-off for me, so. We're actually seeing Taka take a bit of a lead here.
Absolutely, we did. Yeah, and just pillar clip or not pillar clip, but pull one skip there. Again, these tricks that are just spaced throughout the course of this run that at a top level, if you're PBing and you're getting a sub 3, these are things that you just need to go through the entirety of the run not making any of these mistakes. A truly amazing feat.
Oh, the number of times I've been trolled in this room by getting the final hit on the Poe and it being out of bounds. Oh, thank you, Jim, for pointing that out. I assume you're going by Jim, J_IM. And of course, this part of the temple actually being a callback to Ocarina of Time, the forest temple therein, where you had to also collect the postals. Yeah.
Kind of a nice mixture of different themes throughout the Zelda games. This one kind of bringing back an ode to like the undead areas, like the Shadow Temple for example, kind of using that aspect, combining it with the Forest Temple, collecting the pose and all that kind of good stuff. This being one of the lengthier dungeons in the run, I think time-wise we spend the most amount of time in Palace of Twilight during this run. That's just due to the fact that Palace is, I guess most runners would probably consider that to be the most challenging dungeon through the course of the run to optimize and not make any mistakes, do it as fast as possible. Palace can get pretty intense. So both runners have now basically completed the rupee route, both sitting comfortably at 300 rubies, or will do so after this room, which they're in the same room right now. Yeah. Dealing with what I had talked about earlier, kind of the trolley aspect of collecting these Poes. Each Poe has something dumb and trolly that you can have happen to you. Getting attacked by these little skeleton guys.
We're gonna have to see a quick attack here, the Taka, to avoid getting hit for that last half hard here too. Alright, well, yeah. Perfect. Picked up that hard, that's good to see.
Both runners have 300 rubies, leaving Arbiter's Grounds, which is perfect.
Stealth Kids?
Yeah. I think that is what they're called. Good call.
Now, I remember in Ocarina of Time, I believe they were called Stealth Children. Now, I don't know if they changed.
Yes. Yeah, but these are slightly different enemies too. I mean, the Stall Children were. These are. The game is pounding me, JD said. You did get rather bad trolley luck in that last Poe room for sure. That will happen.
Yeah. Jim, you're absolutely correct. They were Stall Children by 64s. Now, I'm not entirely sure if they 100% going to change the name to Stall Kids. I'm not personally sure. Stalkin. Okay, that would make sense.
Also, a neat little skip that we just saw Taka do right there. Able to clip through the wall there with Wolf Link, or kind of clip between the wall and the pillar there. We'll see JD do it right now. Neat little fast way to skip a portion of the dungeon to collect the boss key very quickly here.
Oh boy!
Another one of those things too that maybe might seem hard. Thankfully, it's one of the blissfully easier tricks in the run. Not necessarily free by any means, but one of the ones where thankfully it doesn't take like hours and hours of grinding to be able to do. So, if again for those casual viewers that are kind of looking for some neat sequence break things to try out for themselves, that I could also recommend as a good starting point.
Absolutely. If I had known that that strat casually, I would have been much happier with this dungeon. I think my least favorite part of this dungeon was attempting to go around and get the spinner in order to get the boss key.
Absolutely. So cool little movement optimizations through this room. This room has a lot of different ways that runners have used to get through it as quickly as possible. Both runners are doing just something slightly different here, and it's just essentially to make it to this door, having this door open while we're standing in front of it, essentially. Little optimization.
And I'm wondering if we are going to see Death Sword skip by Taka here.
Possible. I'm not going to say I doubt it one way or the other. I don't personally know if either runners go for that. I will say it would be neat. That's I think maybe the newest major time save. It's not really a major time save, but it's a very difficult trick made recently RTA viable. Taka is fighting the boss.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is my personal favorite fight that we do in this run. It is one of the more complex fights. There's a few different, I guess you could say, quote-unquote, fastest ways to do it. I personally use the ball and chain / yes, the method that we're seeing JD go for right here. If you don't get it, though, and it's very tight, it is actually much faster and safer to do it the way you saw Taka do it. I think it's like literally a difference of 3 seconds or something, like 3 or 5 seconds, except that you have the risk of losing more if you don't get the one cycle the way that JD did. So kind of like take your pick. If you're very consistent at saving those 3 seconds, go for it.
I honestly, my one, I guess, grievance about this game casually is that Death Sword wasn't a bigger part of the game. I think it would have been a really cool recurring boss fight.
Absolutely. I mean, that is one of the neatest boss fights throughout the course of the run, absolutely, for sure. In casual gameplay as well. One of the more difficult ones as well. So I personally didn't find many fights in this game as a casual player with all your beefed up health and hearts and Zora armor to be all that challenging as a casual player, but that was one of the great things that speedrunning this game actually gave life to. This game was already amazing in so many different ways, and it actually created a massive level of difficulty for a lot of the boss fights in this game, learning how to sequence break and do them, in a speedrunning fashion. So I would say that was one of the major benefits, personally, for learning the speedrun.
Absolutely, and for anyone wondering, casual players in the chat, if a game you are interested in might be worth speedrunning, my only question is, are you not enjoying it as much anymore? Because once you've gotten to that point, it may be worth looking at speedrunning. It's one of those things that, for a lot of people, like Bisky said, will reinvigorate your love of the game.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. There's already so many reasons that I love the Twilight Princess, for example, but speedrunning it just opened up a whole new can of worms, and it brings in frustrations as well, but they're frustrations that we're obviously on a daily basis willing to deal with because we continue to do it, right?
Absolutely.
I do realize that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, and but maybe we're all insane, but hey, as long as we're all on the same page.
I mean, yeah, the suspicions will always be there for me about insanity versus speedrunning.
Oftentimes they go hand in hand, for sure.
Absolutely. But hey, you do it enough, and sometimes the results do change. Then you wonder, are we truly insane, or is something actually going on here?
Yeah, I think you're right in chat. That sounds accurate. The Elfos and Dark Knight. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Now, I am curious whether we're going to see anyone, once we do get to the City of the Sky, attempt to go for the skip on our Elfos.
Oh, I'm sure. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. I'm fairly confident both runners will be doing that. It is a pixel perfect trick, but it is relatively not bad to learn, honestly, if you just do it. And this right here, you're witnessing why this is my personal least favorite boss fight in the speedruns. As a casual player, this fight I didn't have any problems with it. I thought it was nice and complex and long. As a speedrun, these final couple of hits on the spinal column can just be the biggest troll trolls in the entire world. We're talking about a difference of like finishing this fight up in, you know, like 2 or 3 minutes, or spending like 7 minutes doing this fight. It can just be extraordinarily frustrating. And thankfully we did see, and we actually did see a lead change here. That being due to the fact that Taka was unfortunately, let's just say Staller did not want to cooperate.
One of the neat things is they actually consulted physicians when designing this boss to figure out how to place a number of what are called spinal processes on the things jutting out of the spine that wouldn't normally be there on a human. Humans do have spinal processes, but not in the same way. And I think it's really cool that they did consult a physician, physicians plural rather, in order to get the accuracy of this boss where they wanted it to be.
Now we are going to see JD attempt to do a pretty challenging trick right here. 5 rolls and timing to jump on that at the proper time allows him to hit the skull before having to ever go up and go around the room. Pretty significant time save, fairly tight window of timing. Hopefully we see Taka get it here as well. And then it's followed up. Yep, okay, we're good. It's followed up by another example of fairly precise damage sequencing with the Master Sword here. If you chain infinite quick spins into each other essentially during the first fight after getting the quick hit on the skull, you can end the fight in one phase here. I believe it's supposed to take 4 casually, possibly 3, but I think it might be 4. And that means 4 different times of having to go all the way up that middle column, you know, waiting for Staller to attack you, jumping between the wall and the center. Very significant time save in terms of, you know, learning that fight properly is definitely pretty crucial to saving time at this portion of the game. You can lose a lot of time to not doing that fight properly.
Virtue with the possible speedrunner and waiting strats there, ending it casually in 1.
Oh my goodness, that quick spins are too good. Dude, that is truths. Words of truth right there.
Everyone needs to report quick spins for feeding. Yeah, if only the spinner could be this fast other places.
Absolutely. It would be some pretty neat movement tech. I can agree to that. It would save a lot of time in Hyrule Castle, actually, when you're walking to get the boss key at the end there.
Yeah, it really would.
That would save a ton of time, actually, to be perfectly honest. That is like one portion of the game where we don't really switch to Wolf Link because it's not faster to do so, but we also are stuck just doing a ton of rolls with Link. One of the few portions of the game, apart from the beginning, where we actually spend a lot of significant time rolling. Right here, you're about to see, I'd say from a casual perspective, the second most significant sequence break in the entire run. The first being EMS, obviously. This, however, simple trick that we're about to witness, and it is fairly simple. It's not super hard to do. Unfortunately, JD did fail it there, but no big deal. I'm sure he'll get it here rather quickly. This skips a very significant portion of the game. You don't have to go to the Temple of Time. You don't have to get the rod that
the useless rod.
The useless rod. You don't have to go around all of Hyrule tricking or like using the rod on the owl statues to collect, basically, you know, to get into this portion of the game. Getting past that statue right there with a simple manipulation of changing into, you know, Wolf Link from human to get clipped through the wall there cuts out a massive portion of the game from a casual perspective.
For sure. Early City in the Sky is such an incredible find at the time, and still is so crucial to the speed run, being able to skip, like Pisky said, all of the Temple of Time.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at easily the difference of over 20 minutes of gameplay, for sure.
Mm-hmm. We don't get to hear
Shad chanting.
I mean, you are correct.
There's always a drawback, you know. There's always got to be something. So, as Mark just pointed out, that is what we call Early City in the Sky. That's kind of the name of that little sequence break that we just did, referencing that we are now much earlier than intended, heading to City in the Sky, the second of the dungeon crawl portion of the run here. This dungeon has a little bit more of kind of a complex structure to it. It doesn't necessarily have the pure trolley movement optimization that Arbiter's Grounds does, but it has some fairly significant tricks that, especially early on, that you might miss, because I'm fairly confident that both runners will not have an issue here, but it is stuff that can crop up, especially when you're learning the speedrun. We're going to get something called fan skip here early on, and that's going to skip basically having to go around the entire second portion of the entire temple and collecting the boss key the slow way, I guess is what I'll call it. There's a trigger that we can skip hitting before we go through the second door here, not in the first room, but the second room. If we're careful to not hit that trigger, we don't activate the ceiling fan in the main room following that. And basically, that, you know, I've never timed it myself. I don't know the exact amount of time it saves, but it's fairly significant. It's a fairly large portion of the dungeon. After that, we're going to want to be careful to not activate a cutscene that is the boss destroying a bridge, which also changes your location that you save warp to after getting the double claw shots. And that follows getting the fan skip here pretty quickly. So a couple of things early on in this temple that are fairly major to get. Apart from that, there's some trolley stuff like you just saw. JD just got knocked into the void. Unfortunately. Stuff like that can obviously be used to save time too. To get the claw shots, there will be another trick that comes up. Mark alluded to it earlier. It is pixel perfect. Ooh. I've never seen a non-rolling method before. Neat. Yeah, we're good. It looks like JD was successful there. And Taka equally is successful there. That is a pretty rip thing. I've had it happen to me in runs where I actually failed that skip, and it's not good.
It's very unfortunate when that happens.
Very, very unfortunate, yes. So again, this temple being slightly different in its, I guess, structure to Arbiter's Grounds. I don't really know which I would consider to be more challenging. I guess probably Arbiter's Grounds long term. This temple is one of those where once you've done it enough times, I'm sure it becomes less difficult overall. But there is some pretty challenging stuff that occurs. Some pretty precise LJAs coming up at the end of the temple, which, you know, well, I guess we'll discuss when they become relevant.
All I have to say is bonus points if they hit a card rock.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Oh my goodness.
Neat little strat there. I love that strat. Just boom, right over the fence there. That's a neat one.
Absolutely. Both players separated here by literally just a loading screen. That's how
don't you know that's the mark of a truly great race, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
2 hours and 12 minutes into a speed run, and the runners are quite literally separated by a loading screen. Our first runner successfully skipping the bridge cutscene. Neat. Taka actually demonstrating the other method. So there's two methods that are historically used, and it kind of depends on whether or not the wind is blowing when you cross the bridge. if the wind is blowing at you as you're crossing the bridge, it's slightly faster to go for the method that we saw JD use. However, if that wind isn't blowing as you cross the bridge, which is RNG, unless you're like uber duber fast, it's actually better to do it the way that we saw Taka do it, because you don't have to sit and wait for the wind cycle to finish, essentially. That cutscene, again, being fairly important to skip. Not only is it stupid time loss to, have to watch a cutscene unnecessarily, but it actually changes where you save warp to after getting double claw shots. So for multiple reasons, it's better, obviously, to get first try.
I do want to call a quick shout out to Uber Duber 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 Duber.
And I mean uber duper duper too. I mean, like, you got to be really fast to beat that wind cycle if it wasn't already going as you're crossing the bridge.
Mm-hmm. Has anyone figured out how to quick throw the boomerang here to cross that gap?
Yeah, if you hit something like a pillar or something with the boomerang, it comes back way faster. So we saw it in the beginning there, and probably a second ago. Both runners actually voiding out in this. Wow, the essence of a truly great race here. Man, that is fantastic.
We are separated by about 1 second right now.
Oh, that was pretty fantastic. Literally seeing both runners experience the same. We're less than a half a second. Okay, about a second.
Interesting. Different strats used by both runners.
Yeah, different strats used. Again, yeah. But both beating the cutscene. So you can hook shot up to the claw shot. up to the vines there before the cutscene of showing you like, yeah, you did the rooms thingy. And again, kind of a mark of just like good movement at that portion. If you're beating that cutscene, then you're also doing it more optimally.
Mm-hmm. Old habits certainly die hard when we call it hook shot over claw shot.
Yeah. Us 90s babies, Zelda runners. This is one of my favorite rooms in the game, personally. Not. So as we just saw, when two, significantly talented runners at the game go through this room, it didn't look like there was anything really significant happening at all. When in fact that last room that they went through can be really, really slow if you don't do it right. I think my first run lost something like 11 minutes to that room. I'm not even kidding. 11 minutes. Versus like what? I mean, literally less than a minute, like 30 seconds to get through that entire room if done properly. So, yeah, that room can be major trolly.
Mm-hmm. And Taka getting the quick fall through the cutscene there.
Oh, nice. Yep. And yes, we are going to see both runners go for it here. I have fairly decent faith that
Taka
both will get
gets it very quickly.
Oh no!
JD also got it.
Yes, look at that. Clutch City right now.
Taka very slightly ahead because of how quickly they got the the trick there.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Just very solid. Taka really with a very solid second portion, portion of the run. A little bit of unfortunates early on, but really cleaned it up here for the significant portion of the run here. Both runners playing fantastic. I mean, most of the tricks we're getting first try. This game is extraordinarily difficult pretty much all the way through. So seeing a run go relatively smoothly is always a treat.
Mm-hmm. Honestly, both of these runners should be very proud of how they're playing so far.
Absolutely. I mean, especially in a tournament setting, you couldn't be happier with the results right now. No, I don't. I think very few runners, especially at the top level, really expect to realistically come within their PB range during the tournament. And if they do, it's just a super nice, like, oh, cool.
Pitsky, do you happen to know who's in charge of the timer here?
I would assume Jinx Girl, maybe, but it could also possibly be Cub Fan too.
Okay.
Why, is there something going wrong?
No, certainly not. I'm just curious. I just wanted to
Okay.
make sure that someone, was on the timer, so that when it comes to that time.
Perfect. Right on. So unfortunately, JD missing the LJ at the top of this area right here. Little LJ time saver that we use to skip going around the room. Falling behind a little bit from that.
Mm-hmm. Taka securing a bit more of a lead because of it. They're playing very consistently still. And here we are going to see one of those difficult LJs that.
So this is going to be. I'd say this is probably one of the most precise LJs we do in the entire run, and I mean, so this is actually a different version of the LJ. I do a slightly different one. So that's how you do that. That is great to know. I've actually wondered how to do that strat, because if you fail the other LJ, I've always wanted to know how to do that backup. So that's actually really neat. Now that I've seen that okay, that's great. It does look like JD is going to be going for the one that I was inferring. This one is it's tight, and it's got a tight timing to it. It's not necessarily super hard, but he's going to get trolled by the bird, of course. Both of these LJs, decent time savers. Yeah, it's much easier, but slightly slower. That's exactly. And actually, it's great I got to see that. I had been wondering how to do that strat. I hadn't ever actually looked into it. And if you get trolled too hard on the first double LJ, it's not worth sitting there trying to go for it over and over again. So.
Taka attempting a movement optimization there. It's possible for just a split second to get the next target as soon as you get to one of those little spinny devices here. If not, it is faster to just roll to the other side and try to pick up there.
This is a good example of one of those rooms that you'll always hear top runners preach about practicing a lot. And, starting off running this game, you don't necessarily see any purpose in actually grinding this room, practicing it a lot. Honestly, because, the time loss differential is negligible in terms of if you have like 20 minutes to save over the course of your run, grinding this room doesn't necessarily seem of the utmost importance. However, this is one of those rooms in the game that top runners will preach about. As Mark pointed out there is some optimizations to get through that room, which are fairly difficult and fairly tight, and significant in the sense that they could save, I think, over 15-20 seconds if done properly.
Of course, Taka getting the Adam shot there.
And so, in 15-20 seconds when you're attempting to PB at this level is, a definitely nice buffer to have. So
both runners getting the Adam shot there. Getting very quickly to the top of those vines without having to climb.
And now we'll see, hopefully, both runners utilizing. There's a quick little time save we can do here. If you're fast enough, you can actually hookshot and re-grab Claw Shot and re-grab Argarok's tail before he flies away. Taka getting it.
Is it Rob Shot? That very much could be. My apologies.
What's up?
Chad just pointing out it's Rob Shot, not Adam Shot.
Oh, I've never heard it referred to as either, so I guess I don't know. Good call. I just always assumed it was like the strat.
It skips like so much climbing just by doing a precise shot there.
So both runners getting the slight time save on Argarok. Yeah, Argarok here. It skips Argarok flying around for about, I think, like 15-25 seconds. And then coming back and allowing you to get like the second hook shot, claw shot to the tail. You do need to be pretty fast though. You have a fairly tight window to get that second hook claw shot in. Dude, I honestly, despite having said it like 10 times in the last like couple of minutes, I still can't get it right.
Taka demonstrating a void out of use here. You can jump off the map to make sure that the I don't remember what they're called. The devices you hang off of ascend a little bit quicker.
Also, I think it also dictates whether or not Argarok's like waiting for you at the top of the room versus flying around. So a skip hit right here. This is fairly significant. It might not have looked like much, but Taka waited for the fire to be completely over his head before claw-shotting the next P-hat. And this actually caused the fire that Argarok's breathing to end, like, I think it's 2 or 3 P-hats early.
Did someone just link the Bonesaw's site to earn.com?
So that's nice. Nice little time save. You can do that on both the first and the third phases of this to end the cycles earlier.
Bisky, do you happen to know who discovered that little strat there?
I don't actually. It's been used since I started running the game, and I found out about it via ZSR's website, the Zelda speedrun website, particularly the Twilight Princess portion of it. But it's just, they maybe have it cited on there, but I guess I didn't pay too close attention if they did. So I know some of the tricks and sequence breaks are cited on the ZSR Twilight Princess page. I don't think 100% of them are, so kind of hit or miss.
Gotcha.
We are keeping it close here, I gotta say. So, my guess is JD probably got the extra fast third cycle in order to kind of close the gap there. Bringing us back to a differential of, I mean, I guess I'm not 100% sure, but it does appear to be less than 15 seconds.
It's about 5 seconds.
About 5 seconds. Okay, so yeah, I knew it was definitely less than 15. Neck and neck here. That's what I like to see. Good competitive race.
Absolutely. We are.
And a big part of this too, it's not letting mistakes affect your mentality. Knowing that this is a tournament race, to progress in a ladder, in a bracket, and playing cleanly as both runners have been doing, despite maybe failing some parts that they wouldn't necessarily accept during PB attempts. My probably going off on a limb here to say, if, for example, JD failed Morpheal during a PB attempt, it's almost guaranteed to be a reset at that point. Versus a tournament, race here where we're seeing the runner continue despite that, but not letting that mentality affect the rest of your gameplay and continuing to just, play cleanly and not let it affect your mentality. It's definitely good to see, not always the easiest thing to do.
It's certainly a sign of a very seasoned runner to be able to keep a cool head after that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
All right, now we're getting to the real crunch time here. We're about to see both players enter the
Palace.
Twilight realm.
Palace of Twilight. Yes.
Imagine
For
if
reference,
you will.
for reference, in my first couple runs, I think I saved over 25 or 30 minutes in simply just doing this temple better than I had in previous run attempts.
Mm-hmm.
There's just chock full of areas, basically room by room, where you can save significant time over a runner who's not doing the fastest known strats or doing them, consistently.
Mm-hmm. We're about to
Palace
see
of Tears, exactly.
Palace of Tears. That's fantastic. Getting the two devices that let you enter the palace proper, the souls, SOL they call it, is really a sign of of how cool a head you can keep when something generally fairly anxiety inducing is happening, as the hand that chases you is trying to catch up to you while you're
Ever luminous.
using the soul. For sure.
Yeah, ever luminous. You are racing it the whole time, and failing some of the movements and methods throughout the course of it can actually lead to possibly even not like it's ever happened to me or anything. As I shake my shirt collar a little bit, the hand actually picking the light back up and escaping back into the room with it.
For sure.
Basically the worst possible thing that can happen. Totally never happened to me or anything before.
I'm told a number of runners actually turn the sound on their TV when they're doing this, so that they don't have to listen to the music that plays and gets more and more ominous the closer the hand gets to you.
Except I'm guessing they do keep it for Phantom Zant, which is coming up here. You'll see both runners doing Phantom Zant here. This is probably one of the more So there's a method to doing this fight where it is not RNG based. Basically, you can consistently finish the fight in 3 cycles. But if you miss the damage sequence on Phantom Zant, for example, and he ends up being able to spawn enemies, it becomes totally random how many times he warps around the room before he stops again. So you can lose a lot of time to not doing this strat properly. And you have to do this fight twice, unfortunately.
Yeah, this fight was generally quite infuriating to me casually.
Absolutely. And there are a couple of different known methods for doing it, but as you'll see, both I want to say they're literally so incremental that it's just up to the runner which one they like the best. As long as you do one of the ones that is known to be fastest. Obviously, there's probably other ways you can do it, despite that as well.
Absolutely, and JD once again pulling very slightly ahead here, about 1 second ahead.
So, little cool things too that you'll notice going through this temple. Basically, there's little things that are different. So the 2 sides are kind of like mirrors of each other, except they, obviously apart from the layout and distribution of the rooms being slightly different, there's little nuancy changes as well. Certain cutscenes that only spawn the first time on the first half, and things like approaching the eye before approaching the ball of light before hookshotting it after the hand drops it. Little things like that change from which side you're on, actually. So. We just watched both the runners do the same jump attack up the same ledge at the exact same time.
This is incredibly close.
And this is a great example of just the minutest executional, differences in movement and stuff, how big of a difference they can play. While we saw the jump attack happen at the exact same frame, essentially, they somehow ended up being about 2 seconds apart from each other by the end of that room, simply due to just, movement optimization, essentially.
Now, I've noticed that JD is declined to split for City in the Sky. Has the Master Sword 2.0 sign there. Now, that is a callback to all the times that you have to go up and go around and power up your Master Sword before proceeding. Of course, some people just call it the Butter Blade, though, as you'll see for reasons coming up shortly. And that was a good jump attack there by Taka to get the quick cycle, as well as JD. Taka's enemy, unfortunately, spawning close to the middle there for the moment. JD pulling slightly ahead because of it.
RNG rears its ugly head, alas, a few times yet before the end of the run. Most notably Zelda, but apart from that, little tiny things like Mark just pointed out do play some role as well.
It is my sincere hope that neither player gets the 16 cycle Zelda.
So fun fact, in my most recent PB, which I PB'd by over 12 minutes from my last run, unfortunately got a 12 cycle Zelda.
Oh, that's so brutal.
But I mean, honestly, maybe that's just a good thing, because that means now when I get my next PB, anything better than a 12 cycle will be a time save. So.
And of course, this game not sparing us the references with playing ping pong, except with Zelda this time instead of Ganondorf.
Yeah. Until you have a good time in this game, you almost don't want the 7 cycle, if I'm being honest with you, because then you don't have to worry about getting a 7 cycle in order to save time.
Can't imagine what other game might have something like that. Zoid.
Oh Lord, don't even get me started on Zoid. Oh man. Yeah, very prime parallel that you just drew there. You see what I did? See what I did there?
I understood that reference.
The primest of parallels. JD using the damage sequence that I actually just find to be so difficult for this boss. A stab into 2 quick spins, being obviously, I think, by frames faster than 3 stabs, and then 4 stabs on the final cycle, which is what I opt to use. But chaining a stab into 2 quick spins like that, one of the more notably challenging things to get good at in terms of swordplay in this game. Surprisingly hard to do if you're just starting out.
I love how a lot of these rooms casually are very unintuitive. You don't think to hookshot the soul at first. Most people just run up and attack the hand and then pick it up, walk to the center of the room, and try to walk up after. But claw shotting. Oh boy, we're both doing it now.
I got you on it now too. Yeah. Shout outs to the hook shot.
And this room especially, where you actually have to be standing in a certain position to be able to make it all the way up the room. They don't show you that at first that you're not going to get a complete staircase.
Yep. Just little things that we optimized throughout the course of doing it as a speed run. that aren't necessarily like, it's not a sequence break and it's not anything that the game didn't necessarily intend, but just really neat ways that we've found to make the game faster.
Mm-hmm. Is that JD using ESS position there to spin like that?
Yeah, it sure is. I have actually glimpsed, believe it or not. It was a while ago, but some brake sliding.
Ooh.
I haven't seen it done in a while here, but I can't remember which runner did it, but I did see it happen earlier. I want to say at least once. Switch hooking, I like it. I'm gonna go with that from now on.
JD, of course, being able to hit that hook shot there, or excuse me, claw shot, very important as you lose a bunch of time if you miss it.
Switch hooking. And Taka getting it as well. Good.
Sorry, which is switch hooking?
Switch hooking. That's the new gym approved pronunciation for hook shotting.
Oh boy.
Or claw shotting.
Oh no. Oracle remakes when? Oh boy.
So now we're entering basically the second half. You know, this is a unique thing I just realized about the dungeons that we do in the second half of this run. Most of them are split between like two basically distinct sections, a first and a second half. Arbiter's Grounds, being divided by the spinner. Arbiter's Grounds being divided by the spinner. City in the Sky being divided by getting the claw shots, the double claw shots. And now Palace of Twilight being divided by pre and post Master Sword 2.0 is what I like to refer to it as, or the powered up Master Sword. Entering the second portion here, the movement becomes a little bit less challenging, or I should say the tricks become a little bit less challenging, but the movement gets a lot harder. Particularly coming up here, we're going to try and get early platform cycle, which is climbing a very tall room, attempting to the best of our ability to do it as quickly as possible and most optimized in order to not have to wait for a fairly lengthy platform cycle. Taka getting a time-saving LJA there that JD unfortunately missed and fell to the bottom of the room. This temple has a lot of those. A lot of really nitpicky and kind of semi-challenging LJs that you can use to save time, but failure actually can be rather significant. Taka about to do one that I personally fear quite a lot. Maybe not. Maybe just getting the keys gathered towards him with the boomerang. Actually, neither runner opting to go for this particular LJ. It looks like a rather risky one to go for, admittedly. I was wondering that too, honestly. I couldn't tell, but I've also seen runners use the boomerang there to like gather the keys towards them. So I wasn't 100% sure which occurrence it was, but I did notice that, and it's very possible that Taka got bumped out of that particular one. Yeah.
A great deciding factor of how the rest of this go is how both runners' Zan fights go here, and we're going to be approaching it fairly quickly.
The Zan fight is a nice kind of final, like, yeah. This is the challenging aspects don't really want to give up until the very bitter end here, and the Zan fight, while not being necessarily, I guess it probably is the most difficult fight to optimize during the course of the run, honestly. Morpheal is the hardest fight, I guess I would say. Especially if you're doing it without Zora armor. But Zant definitely has some tongs in that fire as well.
For sure. And I mean, like, short of the boss rush at the end, it's kind of like you said, it's one of the most difficult to optimize. Of course, the boss rush being just incredible amounts of RNG all at once.
So shoutouts to JD playing it close to the wire here. One of the things that runners do to optimize time in this run is skipping heart pieces that you can get throughout the course of the run. And Palace of Twilight can be rather grueling health-wise. And when JD picked up that last heart there, he was like a quarter of a heart away from dying while running past an enemy that was trying to damage him. so it can be really risky to skip those heart pickups, but obviously faster. So
yeah, that Shadow Beast fight could have been incredibly scary if he was still at 3/4 heart.
Oh, absolutely. Just a quarter of a heart, and basically any room near the end of this run is pretty terrifying. Or by the end of this temple is pretty terrifying. Sick. That's how you do the early platform cycle. I've always found those LJs to be really cool right there.
Mm-hmm. And now, I've never personally been trolled by this, but I have seen people get trolled by the Twilight Baba there. That,
I definitely have been trolled. Confirmed. That is definitely a thing.
That's it's incredibly unfortunate and mildly entertaining, at least, to see someone get knocked off. Now, I'm a bit of a sadist in that regard, though, so don't take it from me on that one.
I mean, entertaining, yes. Extraordinarily unfortunate. True. This is a very tall room, and as I mentioned, this falling in this room is another parallel to Prime. Just falling in any of the tall rooms in that game, pretty much the worst thing that can happen.
Falling in shores trying to enter waves on.
Yeah, exactly. Falling in tall rooms in speedrunning in general just seems like a bad thing.
I mean, for sure. I mean, especially when what you're trying to do is at the top of a room. I don't think anyone's too upset when you fall in lines and you're trying to exit.
Definitely not.
Mostly because it's probably intentional at that point.
So here you can just do some cool little swaggy pre-empting the quick spin on these enemies before they actually spawn and drop, just kind of anticipating them coming. Obviously, just some time save, some frame savers here.
Little unfortunate little lore piece here. You are unfortunately stone cold murdering people of the Twilight when you do that.
Absolutely.
Very similar.
Gotta go fast. Gotta go fast.
For sure. Jumping on the Goombas.
Jumping on the Goombas, exactly. Everybody's had to sacrifice a Yoshi or two to get to the end of a speedrun.
Oh yes, especially in Mario Maker.
Poor Yoshi. The highly abused dinosaur.
How could this happen to me? Yeah. Sometimes Yoshi bites the bullet for you trying to get to the top of a room.
Literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times.
For sure.
So throughout the course of this fight, I'll try and do my best here. There's kind of a lot going on for pure, true optimizations, but essentially you're progressing each stage of the fight by hitting Zant with the final hit of a combo, of a sword combo. The final hit is what advances them to the next phase. So the runners are using slight setups here to be swinging that final sword, or final hit of the combo when they're gonna hit Zant. And in this phase particularly too, flinging the boomerang around actually prevents full-on portions of actual segments of the fight. We're now progressing to the portion of the fight here that Taka having the Zora armor has nothing to worry about. this isn't necessarily nowhere near as hard as Morpheal without Zora armor from earlier, but it is something that I personally did fail, like my first time getting to this part in the run. It's not free necessarily. This is one more time where not having Zora armor does come into play. The timing right here particularly is very tight. Getting that bomb off and not rocket linking to the top of the room, which is a rip, before you run out of air is pretty tight. So, apart from if you get past that though, you're probably sitting all right. The second half of this not being nearly as difficult.
Pisky, I'm just having a bit of a technical difficulty here. Let me just mute my mic here.
Yeah, no worries.
Won't take me too long to fix. My apologies.
Yeah, no worries, man. JD, being the seasoned veteran as he is, though, obviously had no troubles there with the underwater Zant fight without having Zora armor. So, as Mark had kind of mentioned too, this is basically a bit of a boss rush. You know, you're kind of getting bits and pieces of prior boss fights with a little bit of a unique twist on it as you're fighting Zant instead. The phase that we're seeing now obviously was skipped in this any% run. This is supposed to be the final boss fight for the Snow Peak Ruins, but we only ever go to Snow Peak Ruins to simply get the ball and chain, and then we leave. So we don't actually see this boss fight in any percent, but it is representing the final boss fight against the Yeti wife in Snow Peak Ruins. The final stage here, by far the hardest portion of the fight, and most detrimental to get wrong. I'm sure both of the runners, you're seeing a little bit of a setup here that Taka used to hit Zant there. This is a very specific sword dance that you do to end this fight very quickly. This fight can go from bad to worse pretty fast, especially if you start getting hit by Zant's spin attack. It can honestly just be a really bad time. Both runners getting the really nice final Zant there. Well done to the runners there. That's pretty challenging to do. Not an easy portion of the fight there. Easy to mess up and very noticeable in the amount of time loss that you sustain from not getting it correct. So one last little hoorah, essentially. As we are now entering the final leg of the run here, we have one thing left to do, and that's to go to Hyrule Castle and face off against Ganondorf. We will see one more LJA. Shoutouts to the LJA. We're not done with you yet. We don't want to talk to that postman, that pesky postman. So we have to skip him one more time on the bridge here. Taka doing it now, and JD right on the heels. This LJA right here, I believe, is the last you'll see in the run, and it is, again, to skip the postman for the second time. Meaning that we don't ever have to talk to that dang guy. I believe it's basically been since they entered the desert to go to Arbiter's grounds, but it has essentially been, I mean, within 15 seconds of each other, pretty much since that point in the run, which was almost an hour. No, it was over an hour ago. So this an incredibly close race. Both the runners doing fine work here, providing a great showcase of competitiveness in a very challenging speed run, and honestly, well done to both of them. And, you know, it's not completely over yet, but thankfully this last little hoorah is nowhere near as demanding as the rest of the run is. So a last little reprieve, as you will. It really has. The runs have been honestly very good up to this point. You know, minor things here and there. I'm sure both the runners feel as if they could have done better, but you know that's going to be the case almost all the time. So, yeah, very different routes. A lot of showcasing of very different strats throughout the course of the run as well, which really demonstrates, I think, in a really neat way, you know, how you get to. This is one of those runs where you get to kind of choose how you want to do it. As you can see, you know, both runners essentially ending up at the exact same point in the run at the end here, after diversely different routes. I've never had a worse run, says JD. Isn't that the truth? And that's just it. There's so much that you can improve upon in this run, and there's so much that can go wrong by the end of it. It is just a feat just to even get a run to the end, honestly. That's still saving time. Honestly, especially when your time is at that caliber. Personally, I would be pretty amiss to turn off a run if I was anything less than like 10 minutes behind, or more than 10 minutes behind at my time, but.
Absolutely. And, you know, going into Hyrule Castle proper here, and we're still less than 10 seconds apart on each runner, and that's absolutely incredible. Mm-hmm. Like I said earlier, these guys should be so proud of themselves.
Absolutely. JD demonstrating my personal favorite strat in the run there, which is the pull out a bomb and do literally nothing to progress. A little time saved strat that you can use. Again, if this is assuming that you manage to conserve your water bombs properly throughout the course of the run. If you had some more field spaghetti, for example, you might not have enough bombs left over in your inventory to do that, but while Morpheal was spaghettied in this run, it wasn't spaghettied in that particular way, so we did get to witness the cool do-nothing strat. Our final fight with King Bubblen here. This one can be fairly challenging. The damage sequencing on the quick spins without having King Bubblen fight back. Not the easiest thing in the world. Not the hardest by any means either, but there is a chest in City in the Sky that has water bombs. PogChamp, I didn't know about that. Sick. Light Sanctity with the backup strats in chat that are definitely worth knowing about. Okay, yeah. Okay, now that you say that, I think I do know what chest you're talking about. I completely forgot that was a thing. So yeah, I guess if you did have some more field spaghetti, I guess there is that you can always do. So good to know, honestly. I had completely forgot about that and thought that you were just totally screwed if you didn't have any water bombs. JD coming up to a rather, I'm not going to call it hard, but this kind of a tight window here. Skipping that cutscene on the first frame while holding left or holding right on the stick there allows you to skip that barrier. Taka getting it as well. I guess one of the last significant things that can go wrong. I mean, you're going to lose like about, I think, like a minute probably if you don't get that first try. So Not 100%. I just totally pulled that number off the top of my head, but it seems fairly accurate. So,
JD demonstrating some very technical damaging to the Dark Nut there.
mm-hmm. This is a neat strat here. Possibly found by SBA, I think. You can just toss the boomerang and then run around to the back of this thing. And there you go. Cool little time save. I usually hate just tossing out names of people that may or may not have potentially discovered things, because like you're literally only right 50% of the time if you don't actually know. But I think that one might have been actually SVA, so... And watch, I'm probably wrong. The one strat that I gave somebody credit for throughout the course of the run, and it probably wasn't accurate. No, that's true. I did call up Mr. Men earlier with the post skip, but that one I'm 100% sure on, so...
JD about to experience the assistance from friends he never knew he had.
With friends like these, for you Elder Scrolls fanatics out there.
Raphael's making a comeback to attempt to troll us one more time there.
I am going to start using that. I did not know about the ball and chain strat, and I really like what I saw.
Yeah, I'm
using the sword to fight. Using the sword to fight Aerofols here actually kind of is annoying if you don't really know exactly what you're doing. I guess I'd never paid close enough attention, but I really like that ball and chain strat that I saw JD use. I'm definitely going to be using that from now on.
I'm certainly going to be watching the VOD to see what happened there.
Yeah, instead of the sword, he pulled out ball and chain and basically used that, did enough damage with that, and then finally released it and pulled it for the final hit, and it looked a lot less trolly than the sword method.
And of course, the friends that we were supposed to have made earlier in the game, coming to save us now. These characters, unfortunately, completely unintroduced during the speedrun.
Yes, all the people that you did meet one of them, the guy that gave you the letter at the top of the tower. I believe he's probably down. Yeah, I think he's probably down there, but
he is. Yes.
Okay. Apart from that, everybody else, people that you actually, if you know who they are by the end of the speedrun, you did not complete the game as fast as possible.
You are so far from fast as possible.
It would not be good to know who those people are. Russell. Shoutouts to Russell. What a guy.
Well, sorry, yeah.
Or no, yeah, Aru. That's the one that gives you the letter.
Aru is guardian of the...
No, you're right. Yeah, totally.
I'm pretty sure Russell's the guy with the... I was gonna say Colin's dead.
Rip, I'm like, who's Colin? For a brief second, I was like, who's... And then I remembered. I guess I need to watch Hundo again sometime soon, don't I?
No kidding. Someone PM Thursday.
Somebody bring back Hundo, honestly. I don't think anybody's done a Hundo... I mean, like, consistently grinded Hundo for a while now.
Good old Oru.
Spoilers, it's not going to be me for a while, because I'm just not capable of doing like a 7-hour run, so.
Yeah, me neither. Guardian of the Jotwad.
Some minor optimizations here to climb the tower. Obviously faster than, casually and stuff. This is right here. Shoutouts to DF.
DF.
Draconif for learning that we could skip that right there, which is awesome. Yeah, a good friend of mine from the both the Twilight Princess and Metroid Prime communities. Literally, it wasn't known for the longest time until DF came along that you could just stand there and hookshot that light to skip that final Dark Nut fight. So, shout outs to DF. I'm DF. All right, Zelda.
I'm DCF.
All right, Zelda. Be nice. Be nice. Let's see some good, clean 7 to 8 cycles here. I don't want to see any.
Nice.
I don't want to see any 12 cycle shenanigans here.
All right, you keep count for JD. I'll keep count for Taka.
And you can actually kind of know and gauge what it's going to be like by like the second, how it starts. So JD got a potential start, still on track. One of the 7 cycles that you can get, I believe. As long as this next one is a light. Yes. All right. Cool. I think this next one might need to be a light too, if he's going to be on track for it. Oh, that's unfortunate. I'm not 100% sure that's a rip on the 7 cycle, but I think it is. Okay. If we get 2 in a row here. Other than that, a potential 8 cycle here. So both runners, unfortunately, not getting a 7 cycle.
Yeah, Zelda unfortunately being a little bit trolly for these people.
Rough stuff. It looks like Taka was graceful enough. I think that was possibly an 8. It looks like we ended with a 9 here on JD's. So
Yeah, I do believe Taka was an 8.
yeah.
8 obviously not too bad. I've seen significantly worse.
Oh, absolutely.
Taka unfortunately being hit to the wrong side of Ganon there.
That is rip. It's actually, that's the worst part about it. So the thing about that is it actually is very difficult to get to the side and actually damage B-Scan in there if you get hit to the wrong side. Maybe not even possible. I don't know. I've never seen it done, and for as far as I've been able, whenever it's happened to me, it feels like it's completely out of the realm of possibility. But possibly if you're fast enough, duper fast.
Uber duper. I'm certainly adding that to my list.
Close to 310. Yeah, I don't think either runner is going to be 310. I think it's going to be closer to like 307 or 308, 309 possibly.
It really depends how horseback goes.
I mean, yes, but she can be really bad. But I mean, it's rare to lose more than 20 seconds to that fight or to that portion, unless you get hit off. Unless you get knocked off of your horse, and then it's bad. But at that point, that's just a user error, though.
Yeah, JD pulling ahead here. Unfortunately, Taka did get hit to the wrong side. A little bit of moonwalking going though as well on Taka's end.
Yeah, if all goes according to plan here, we should be looking at sub 310s by both runners, which is, good work. Anyways.
Do we have a confirmation that Taka's PB is 311?
I mean, I looked at it before the run started, and I think that's what it was. So It's possible we're looking at a PB here by Taka. Even
that would be fantastic. Race PBs are always so hype.
I don't want to like hype that up and be wrong about it. I have not looked and double checked to make sure that that's the case, but I'm sure we'll know soon enough. Also, yes, brake sliding, not moonwalking. So earlier we saw JD do a brake slide, and then we finally saw Taka do one at the end too. So that means the run is legit once you get a brake slide. It's not a. 307. Okay, so yeah, see, I think that's the second number I shouted out earlier. I was like, it's either a 311 or like a 307 or
okay.
something.
Gotcha.
And yeah, so both runners with a sub 310 PB, but
Because of course your first two instincts were 7 and 11.
always.
Don't worry, I do the same thing.
An impressive looking blade, but nothing more.
I still remember seeing that speech for the first time. It's so good.
So good. I mean, honestly, they did a really, really fantastic job with the final bosses in this game compared to other Zelda games, which, final bosses have always been, like, Majora's Mask particularly, really excellent, But, yeah, they, on top of doing everything else at a very high level in this game, production-wise, yeah, I definitely agree that GG to JD, who just finished the run here, basically barely ahead of Taka. That was fantastic. Great competitive run. Great competitive runs from both parties there.
Absolutely.
Fantastic to see.
We are seeing Taka very successfully implementing the strats to beat Ganon
Yeah,
here.
that's how it's done right there. And we have a run that was less than 25 seconds apart from each other.
For sure.
Fantastic.
Both of these runners, once again, should be so proud of what they've
G's
done.
to the G's. Absolutely. Taka coming really close within PB range. JD not so much, not quite as close to the PB there, but completing and getting runs to the end of this game is just hard overall, especially if you make mistakes early on. So, fantastic work. They both cleaned it up. Both had really nice end sections. So, yeah, essentially pretty solid runs ever since Arbiter's Grounds on both sides. Minor mistakes here and there, but
Yeah, this is absolutely fantastic. Both runners so cool.
when we entered the desert after Morpheal and MDH, they were within 10 seconds of each other and finished the run in the same way. So yeah, that's good entertainment. Really showcasing. I feel like this, too, the difference in strats and routing too that was demonstrated by both the runners really showcased, a lot of what makes this a particularly special run too. We got to see a very close competitive race done in pretty drastically different fashions compared to some speed games where every second is the same regardless of who you're watching and what's happening. Everything is done the same way. Not the case in this game at all.
Taka keeping it super competitive with strats that were a little bit
typically
less
considered
complex.
slower, right? Exactly. Considered to be minorly safer, but that just proves how difficult this run can be to get to PB at that high caliber sub 3 level.
Absolutely.
Failing one or two mistakes, decently sizable mistakes right there. While still winning the race, kept the run within 15 seconds of each other. So,
and it wasn't until that end, the unfortunate piece with Beast Ganon that it really
Beast Ganon. That was the deciding factor. I mean, it's hard to say who would have won at that if that would not have occurred. It's safe to say that it would have been within frames of each other if both runners, finished final bosses up without making any major errors there.
They both were very they were both very, very competitive, even at Ganon at the end there. They both implemented the quick kill strats very well.
Too, it sounds like there's going to be, stick around. It does sound as if they are attempting to get the runners into post-run interviews. unfortunately dealing with a slight technical difficulties apparently doing so. However, it does appear to be the case. So if you're interested to hear what the runners had to say about the experience, stick around. We are attempting to get interviews up and running. I guess we will keep you posted. It sounds like they are attempting to reach the runners through Discord right now, so hopefully we get an answer on that relatively quickly here.
This will subject to the availability of the runner. If they have an appointment or something, that it will unfortunately be possible. But we're hoping that they both do come in and we can ask them a few questions.
Yeah, overall, I had a blast. Thank you for the co-commentary there, Mr. Markeron. That was a blast getting to watch the two runners compete there. It looks like, oh, never mind, Jinx Skills on top of in chat. Perfect.
And you know what? I appreciate the invite, Pisky. I really.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and originally, too, there was supposed to be another race that was going to be going on during this one too, and I was actually scheduled to do the commentary on both sets of the races by solo. So
that checks out.
Yeah.
And welcome Taka and JD to the Discord call here.
How's it going?
Oh, it's going so well. Yourself?
That was
Absolutely.
a crazy race, dude.
Absolutely. I mean, from our side, it definitely was. The ups and the downs expected to be seen in a tournament race of this caliber, but keeping it competitive to the very bitter end there. Can't really ask for a more entertaining run, from the viewers' perspective anyways. How do you guys feel that it went? Were you overall happy with the performance, or?
Taka did really well, honestly.
Very clean. I mean, again, correct me if I'm wrong, 2 minutes or something from PB there, so that's pretty dang close.
Yeah, overall, pretty consistent.
Taka, we are having a little bit of trouble hearing you. I don't know if your mic is working properly there.
Maybe not.
Well, hopefully we can get that potential technical difficulty resolved there. JD, I do want to ask you, like, how do you personally keep a cool head when you have something unfortunate like dying to Morpheal happen?
I just have to breathe, man.
Breathing is key. It's the truth, and the realization that it is greater than it's more than a PB attempt at that point. I guess it's so easy to get caught up in this horrible thing happened and now the run's totally dead.
Absolutely.
And it's unfortunate, but at the end of the day, it kept the race really close, first of all, but you didn't totally lose your head afterwards. It was nice to see, there a nice prolonged period after that of just nice clean gameplay again, so.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. I will say it was neat. I did catch on to a couple strats that I'm definitely going to be utilizing from both runs. I'm wondering, is there any strats that you go for typically that you opted to not go for in this run? Then I'm assuming maybe potentially Wolf Bombhouse skip during Elden Twilight might be one. I know a lot of the top runners do that, and I can see why you would opt to not go for that in a race. That and any others, I guess, throughout the course of the run. Was there much that you didn't do that your PB would have?
There's an opposite situation I had during Morpheal. I went for something that I shouldn't have gone for, and I paid the price for it. I was trying to get one bomb.
I was wondering how because it's really weird. I was actually trying to piece that together, to be honest, how you ran out of air on the first bomb there, because that was, typically if you've done it correctly up to that point, that's just not really something that you're worried about having happen, but it did. And so I was a little confused, but that does make perfect sense. So you opted to go for the one bomb, and it failed, unfortunately.
Yep.
That'll happen. That is a pretty risky strat. Now, was it? I guess I didn't pay close enough attention. Was it user error, or was it the RNG aspect of it that kind of?
Well, it was actually going fine up until I went for the second regrab to do the third cycle. And when that regrab failed, it's a general fact that if that regrab fails after you've been going for it, you will drown.
Okay.
So it's kind of risky.
Yep.
Now, I do hate to interrupt folks here, but I am going to have to bow out here. I do have an appointment to keep. Well done, both JD and Taka. Congratulations, JD, on moving to the next round here. I hope it all goes well for you guys in the future. Thanks for hosting with me here, Pisky. I'll catch you all.
Absolutely. Thank you for taking along, bud. I'll see
pleasure.
you later.
Cheers.
So we are still kind of. I'm unsure whether or not Taka is still working on maybe getting his mic working here, but you know.
Oh. I can hear him a little bit.
There was something there. It was still a little quiet, but
I could understand him too. He was asking me if he sounded all right.
I don't use
maybe I just have it turned down on my end.
Right click on his name and you can just turn up user volume. I'm probably gonna do that same thing too.
Yep. Perfect. That worked. So Taka, within a couple minutes of the PB there, pretty clean run, honestly. I don't know how aware you guys were of what each other's runs were going through, I guess, during the course of that, but JD obviously actually dying to Morpheal, and having to redo the Morpheal fight. You guys were literally, I think, like 15 seconds apart from each other for like the last hour and 15 minutes of that entire run. So, and that was, with JD actually dying to Morpheal once. So, good clean gameplay on your side there. I guess highlights. So we'll wrap it up with, highlights from both of you guys. What would you say the highlight of that run was for you guys? And then, obviously the low point, which I'm pretty sure JD has already covered, but, it'd be interesting to hear Taka's take on that. So
I'm just happy the run was fairly consistent. There wasn't anything amazing, but there wasn't that many bad parts either, besides getting second try Sword Shield skill.
Absolutely.
I was pretty happy with.
That's right. Both of you actually had that. Come to think of it, now that I remember, yeah, that's so early in the run. There's so much else that happens. It's sometimes you forget whether or not that went okay. Oh yeah, you didn't get Gorge Void too either, did you, Taka?
I did Zora Armor Bite, so I don't have Gorge Void in my route.
And that was the whole. Okay, sure. You did a completely different route. And see, I haven't actually seen all the different routes necessarily, so I was a little unsure as to what happened, what the choice in getting Zora Armor was there and stuff. But I figured maybe it's just because you failed Gorge Void. But okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Right on. Showing, I guess, that the run can be done at that, anything sub 310, pretty significantly decent speed run compared to, when people start off the game and they're getting times of over 4 hours. A lot of people wonder how caught up you need to be on whether or not you're using the fastest route possible. The fact that, you both got a sub 310 there, using different routes goes to show that, runners have that ability to pick and choose early on. They don't necessarily want to go for the hardest route possible.
Personal preference definitely matters more than speed does, because the routes are honestly pretty similar in time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's one of the great things about this game. You can use a whole bunch of different routes depending on what you like. And still
Comfort level, and yeah.
And there's a beginner's route and an intermediate route. There's a bunch of different ways you can do it.
Just knowing, and just how long you've been running the game. I know there's some old school runners that just simply don't want to learn newer strats or something, so they opt to do maybe some outdated stuff, but it doesn't really make that big of a difference in certain areas.
I've been running since 2014, but I definitely enjoy it a lot when new strats come out.
The newest strat. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Did RTA viable Death Sword skip come after Forest Temple Bite, or was Forest Temple Bite discovered after RTA viable Death Sword skip? I was trying to
say before,
because during the run I was trying to give viewers a perspective as to what the newest sequence, the newest greatest sequence break essentially that we're using is, and I know it's like those two basically things are kind of the newest, along with the out of bounds Cargarok flight. I'm pretty sure that's pretty recent as well, but
yeah, a lot of those tricks are old that started to be implemented as
okay.
The run became more optimized.
Sure. Awesome. Well, honestly, if there's anything else that you guys want to say, go ahead and if I didn't notice if chat had any questions. Maybe it didn't look like it necessarily. Just kind of scrolling up through it here just to make sure. A lot of GGs. Yeah, that's the golden rule. Everybody needs to practice, and honestly, it's the stuff that you don't want to practice that you need to practice the most. Usually, so.
The funny thing is, you can practice something a very good amount, but in the end, nerves can completely change the outcome.
I noticed that the most with Sword and Shield skip.
I had it pretty bad there.
Sword and Shield skip is one of those things where for the life of me, if I go to practice it, I'll sit there and get it first try over and over and over again, and it doesn't feel like I have anything to practice. And then without fail, 1 in every 4 runs, completely spaghetti's there, and yeah, the nerves I just completely take over. And once you fail it once, it becomes significantly harder to get it a second, on the second try, in the preceding runs. So the nerves, especially in a trick that precise, really play a big part. Like you said, you can practice the heck out of it and do it fine in practice, but Morpheal is another one for me. I know, especially like I haven't had a lot of runs die to Morpheal, but my goodness, my heart's pounding at the end of that fight every time. So, and that's one nice thing about, I guess, doing the route that you're using, Taka. You don't necessarily have to deal with that stress an hour and a half into the run. So
that's for sure.
While it's really fun to do, I can definitely see it being. I can see the mentality behind it for choosing to do it in a run. I'm guessing like you probably know how to do the trick. It's just a matter of not opting to.
Yeah, you have a lot of options now. I feel the standard 80% herd has gotten kind of stale. I've been running the game for 7 years, so it hasn't changed all that much. So I think
pretty fair
to try something that's not the norm.
Absolutely, I can totally see that. There you go, and that's a great statement to make. Is that this is one of those games where it offers things. It offers answers to your speedrun getting stale kind of thing. Like, oh, your speedrun getting stale. You've been doing the same speedrun for 10 years. Well, at least this one in particular has options where you can do the run slightly differently and still compete for top times. So that's nice. One of the better speedruns out there. One of the last remaining Zelda runs to not be like ridiculously. I mean, this game is very broken, but it's, I guess, not broken quite the way all the other ones are. So
yeah, I think it's just the right amount of broken. There's a few things that would be nice to find, but
absolutely,
I don't think it needs anything huge.
For the most part, we still get to experience a lot of what make Twilight Princess a great game while speedrunning it, which is, I think, the big thing. You guys both gave viewers an excellent showcasing of, why we in the community love the speedrun. So at the end of the day, I think we're all happy with that. JD, congrats on making it into the next round there. Taka, you put up a hell of a fight. So
yeah, that was crazy.
Kept it really competitive, which is nice to see.
That is the best kind of race, honestly.
It really is.
Those ones. They get your blood going, they get your heart racing, and you just don't know what the outcome is going to be.
You really don't. And I mean, if you wouldn't have gotten hit to the wrong side of Beast Ganon, I actually don't know who would have won. I mean, I also...
Or had one more cycle of Zelda or something?
Yeah, well, so I think you had an 8 and JD had a 9. So
I had a 9, yeah.
I had a 7, I think.
No, you didn't. You missed the 7 by 1. Mark was counting. So I mean, if it wasn't a 9, it was an 8. But so you both had pretty similar Zeldas. But you got knocked to the wrong side of Beast Ganon on that one hit, and unfortunately, yeah, that's pretty rip. You know, when you're neck and neck with somebody, that's basically the run. You know, the time difference I think was the split of having to do one last phase on Beast Ganon versus JD.
I did get knocked over by Beast Ganon, but luckily he was in the 3rd phase, so he came out of another portal really quickly.
Yeah, I did notice that. So it wasn't like 100% precise or like whatever optimized fight.
Oh, but... definitely not. It was all right, but yeah, I got knocked over. That made it a little slower.
Okay. I mean, horseback too. I maybe I was wrong. I noticed. Taka, you got knocked off your horse at one point, didn't you?
Yeah, right at the beginning.
Yep.
So annoying.
So a little bit of flubs on the final bosses there, but I mean, honestly, nothing detrimental. Zelda didn't pull any 12 cycle shenanigans on you or anything, so that's nice.
I missed an arrow because Ganon was making some crazy turns. Like, holy crap!
Yeah, horseback is probably the most important one to practice, huh? Like consistently to like not really lose a bunch like chunk of time to the final bosses. I mean, I've only completed like 8 runs or something like that, but from my perspective so far, it seems like it's by far not the hardest or anything, but it does seem like it's the most likely to like mess up or something.
I would agree. Horseback is probably the most practice worthy part of Ganon, with Beast Ganon being 2nd.
Yeah.
And Zelda's just Zelda.
Get hit off at the beginning of horseback, it's free. But as soon as you get hit off, it's fucking stupid.
What did you do to try to avoid the white horse guys?
I just charge, spin, and if I'm going into them, let it go.
Oh, okay. So that's the same thing I did.
That's what I do too, and I mean, it's possibly directional. That isn't it? Like, I mean, if you from what I've heard and what I've always done is like I go left kind of or something like that after I gain control of the horse or whatever, and if I've been charging the quick spin, I typically aren't getting knocked off my horse. I feel like if you choose to not go left or something, maybe that's what causes that, or maybe it's just the timing on your quick spin release. I don't know.
You want to get close enough that Ganon slashes so that you can get behind him, but if you're too close, he'll hit you off, and if you're too far, he won't slash and start chasing you. So you can
okay. Sure. So there's some intricacies there going on.
It's a weird game.
There's JD. I'm assuming your sub 3 didn't use Death Sword skip or anything.
No. I don't think RTA viable Death Sword skip was a thing when I got the PB.
Okay, sure. Right on.
It was over 2 years ago.
Oh wow. Shoutouts to how hard it is to get a sub 3 in this game then.
I've only gotten one other sub 3 and it was like 7 seconds slower than my PB.
Darn. How often have you I guess been active and tried doing runs?
I've been picking it up a little bit more lately.
Sure, okay.
I also just learned a new game, so I've been doing that too.
Yeah, I'm in the multi-game category too. I know I could improve a lot faster in one of the other games that I run if I were to just give up the other, but I personally am very glad I picked up Twilight Princess, so I can't really complain too much. Taka, you've done you've really done the gamut though, right? Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but you've done everything from like the HD runs too, and possibly Wii runs as well on this game. You haven't just solely done GameCube, correct?
Yeah, I started out on Wii in 2013 and then moved to GameCube.
Right, so that's kind of neat. You've really seen the kind of the wide spectrum then of different things that this game has to offer then, really. By doing the different versions. because they are drastically different. The Wii and GameCube and stuff. So
Yeah, that is true. Simi and Hab are definitely the people to go to for Wii stuff. They know more than anybody else.
yeah, they've got some good stuff for sure. And I mean, I don't think Demon's ever gonna come back, so possibly. I doubt it though.
Maybe with earliest Snow Peak.
Maybe with earliest Snow Peak. Yeah.
That would be sick.
I mean, the 254.11 is a hell of a run though, so I can see why he convinced himself he was happy with it after he got it. So at that, I don't know at that stage. I have never been at that position, but I don't know if you're ever like truly happy with your run at that point though. So you're always gonna feel like you always know exactly where you could have saved more time, and it's hard to want to not go back and grind for it, you know. So at the end of the day, he should be very happy with it, and I'm sure he is, but I'm not 100% sure. Well, it looks like unless you guys had anything else, it looks like I'm closing out the Discord call here. So, just something to mention. ZSR is the main stream. Right on. Yeah, so that looks like it's about it. I again want to thank all the runners, all the viewers who came out, participated in this. You guys did did a great job. I know we had fun watching and commentating. So
Yeah, thank you.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you did a great job commentating as well.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's my first time commentating a TP run, so I have done Prime commentary before, but obviously drastically different, especially when I've only picked up the game about 9 months ago. So I learned a lot. I will say that people in chat were definitely helpful in correcting small things here and there and whatnot. So it was definitely a learning experience as well. So
For sure.
So yeah, again, thanks guys. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and keep pushing. Do great work. The community appreciates you. So
Thanks.
yeah, man.
Good race.
Yup, GG.
GG's guys.
GG.